Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Shinigami, a double god, younger brother Aizen. Chapter 1, Rukongai, North 80th District. Brother, we should go too. If you don't leave, you will miss the enrollment time of Spiritual Arts Academy. In that case, you will have to wait another year. In an unremarkable house, Aizen lightly held up his brown-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose, and turned his head to say to a black-haired young man who looked somewhat similar to him not far away. Because you signed up for Spiritual Arts Academy, Reiatsu was worried that you would fail the assessment, so he practiced hard enough to successfully break through the bottleneck of 6 cars and reach 7 cars. A smile flashed across Lan Yan's eyes when he heard the reminder from his ear. 6-car Reiatsu. As a freshman applying for the Spiritual Arts Academy, it is enough. After all, Reiatsu's level is just that of an ordinary captain at the moment, that guy next to him. Yes. He is not a native resident of the Shinigami world, but a time traveler. As a time traveler, it is natural to have a belt. Shinigami system. It is Lan Yan's hanging. As long as one ability is mastered, that ability will be cultivated on its own, as if hanging up, without him needing to worry about it, and he is not allowed to get started. Such as Reiatsu. This is the first ability he possessed after crossing. With the awakening of the Shinigami system, his Reiatsu is like a sage. He is crazy every day and is very competitive. It only took less than half a month to catch up with Aizen, who is the most Reiatsu in the Soul Society. Today, even surpassed Aizen on Reiatsu. It is worth mentioning that this bully king is also the younger brother of Lan Yan. They came to Soul Society together 2 months ago. They haven't enrolled in Spiritual Arts Academy yet, and they haven't mastered any Shinigami training skills. With the natural growth of Reiatsu alone, it only took 2 months to be comparable to the captain-level Shinigami. In terms of the Reiatsu unit of measurement, it is exactly 6 cars. However, Reiatsu, who couldn't stand him, was too competitive, and he had 1 more car than Aizen's Reiatsu. Let's go. Facing Aizen's reminder, Lan Yan picked up the black-rimmed glasses on the table, got up and walked out together with Aizen. Lord Lan Yan, Lord Aizen. The two had just stepped out of the door when hundreds of men and women who had already been waiting outside the door all knelt down at the same time. Rukongai North 80 District. In terms of chaos and violence, it's an area that rivals Zaraki. These spirit bodies kneeling in front of the two were all outstanding figures in the 80th District without exception. Many of them have Reiatsu at the level of 1 or 2 cars. If one graduates from Spiritual Arts Academy and learns Zanquan Zogwei, he will be a team-level Shinigami. He stayed in Area 80 only because he was not bound by the rules of Seraiti. But now, they all became subordinates of Lan Yan and Aizen. Let's go. Lan Yan laughed a word indifferently. Yes, when everyone heard this, they scattered and left. Brother, what are you doing with this kind of ants? Besides wasting the spirit particles in the atmosphere, I can't think of any other use for them. There was a spring-like smile on the corner of Aizen's mouth, but his words revealed a frosty taste. Aizen, even a piece of toilet paper, a pair of underwear has its own function. Let alone a spirit body. Don't waste them lightly. Lan Yan said while walking. You should have found out, right? After you and I Reiatsu have crossed a threshold, although they are still improving steadily, the speed is not as good as before. It's like species getting closer and closer to full development, and getting less and less growth. He turned to look at Aizen and said meaningfully. I see. Even Shinigami has limits. When an individual reaches his limit, he also needs to rely on the power of the group to achieve a breakthrough. Hearing this, Aizen's eyes flashed imperceptibly under the lens, and the hand that was quietly holding the handle of the knife also let go. How clever he is. Naturally he immediately understood what Lan Yan meant. When that day came, the hundreds of souls with powerful spiritual power who had just dispersed were undoubtedly ready-made experimental materials. It's good that you understand. Lan Yan naturally noticed Aizen's actions. In this regard, he did not have any resistance. It has been 2 months since he traveled to the Soul Society 80 area, and he has already adapted to the survival rules of this world and integrated into it. As a younger brother and also a king, Aizen is unwilling to be subordinated to others. As a time traveler, he is still cheating, of course he will not be willing to let others down. Whether it is to apply for the Spiritual Arts Academy, or to keep these materials from the 80th district as subordinates, it is all in his plan. Area 80 is far from Seraiti. Along the way, the two often encountered people who looted fresh water, but before they got close, they were all overwhelmed by the reiatsu emitted intentionally or unintentionally by Aizen. Spiritual Arts Academy. With the arrival of the annual enrollment day, although the examination square is extremely spacious and can accommodate thousands of people, it is still crowded with people who come to apply for the examination. Shihuin Yoruichi. Reiatsu. Vice Captain Class. Rating. S grade. As an examiner reported Shihuin Yoruichi's score, there was a sudden commotion among the crowd. Yoruichi, why did you come to join in the fun? Is the dignified Shihuin Patriarch still going to enroll in the Spiritual Arts Academy? Urahara Kazuki with a sloppy face came over and joked at the wheat-colored girl in front of him. Give Mr. Yamamoto a face. Hey, didn't you see it? Even little Byakuya is in line. Shihuin Yoruichi spread his hands. Learn. Urahara Kazuki followed Shihuin Yoruichi's line of sight. As expected, a noble boy who looked like a dog came into view. Impressively Byakuya Kuchiki. Seeing this, he knew in his heart that the four nobles were showing their favor to Yamamoto Genryusai. After all, even the young patriarchs of the four great nobles came to study at Spiritual Arts Academy, which undoubtedly greatly increased the reputation of the academy, although Spiritual Arts Academy did not lack this reputation. But Yamamoto Genryusai knew and had to accept the favor. Among other things, at least in the process of taking over the position of captain, as long as they don't make mistakes in principle, each of their young patriarchs will go smoothly. Master Byakuya, please put your hand on the reiatsu ball and inject reiatsu. On the other side, Byakuya Kuchiki also noticed the glances from Urahara Kazuki and Shihuin Yoruichi, which he deliberately ignored, and at the slightly flattering prompt of the examiner, put his hand on the reiatsu ball. With the slow injection of reiatsu, the crystal-like reiatsu ball suddenly burst into brilliance of various colors. Purple, blue, green, yellow. Finally settled on orange. Byakuya Kuchiki. Reiatsu. Vice Captain Class. Rating. SS level. As soon as the examiner said this, the candidates around cast envious eyes, but none of them dared to show a jealous expression, and some only offered endless compliments. Another Vice Captain Reiatsu. First Shihuin, then Kuchiki. These four great nobles are all geniuses that have been rarely seen in decades. Facing the overwhelming praise, Byakuya Kuchiki remained expressionless, but just glanced at Shihuin Yoruichi with a hint of arrogance in his eyes, as if showing off. But in the next second, a voice full of shock came from another examiner's mouth. Aizen Sosuke. Reiatsu. Captain Class. Rating. SSS level. As soon as this word came out, all are silent. How? How is it possible? That's SSS class. It is rumored that since the establishment of Spiritual Arts Academy, there has never been a captain-level reiatsu student, let alone an SSS-level score. In the last second, everyone was amazed at the strength of Shihuin Yoruichi and Byakuya Kuchiki. In the next second, everyone's eyes fell on a brown-haired boy who wore brown-rimmed glasses and always had a spring-like smile on his mouth. What is the background of that man with glasses? Higher rating than me and little Byakuya. Urahara, you are not as good as him. In an instant, the eyes of Shihuin Yoruichi, Byakuya Kuchiki, and Urahara Kazuki fell on Aizen at the same time. It's just different from the other two. Urahara Kazuki first took a deep look at Aizen, and then turned his gaze to a black-haired boy who was somewhat similar to him, wearing black-rimmed glasses, with a refined and easy-going smile. Similar faces. The former is like a spring breeze. The latter is refined and easy-going. Especially the standing between the two is not strictly hierarchical, but neck and neck. SSS-level students. I didn't expect that there would be such a rare genius in 100 years. Teacher Yuan Lujai will be very happy to know. The Spiritual Arts Academy was surprised by the SSS-level freshmen, and immediately surprised the captain of the 13th Division, Jishiro Yukitaki, who was in charge of the admissions work. Aizen, right, go through the enrollment procedures for him immediately. Go to the first class. Facing such a genius, Jishiro Yukitaki directly ordered the Shinigami beside him. After all, Even the four nobles, who valued birth and bloodlines above everything else, would inevitably be tempted to recruit them when they saw them. As the captain and a student of Yamamoto Genryusai, he naturally wanted to pull Aizen to the Spiritual Arts Academy ahead of the nobles, and tie him to the chariot of the Gote 13th Division. As for the first class, all Shinigami nobles are born, and they are geniuses among the Shinigami nobles. Such as Byakuya Kuchiki, such as Shihuin Yoruichi. It is not impossible for civilians from Rukongai to enroll, but the premise is that they have the potential to become captain-level Shinigami. Student Aizen, please follow me. The examiner who was testing for Aizen immediately got up and forgot about the work of testing the candidates who were queuing behind. Mr. Examiner, I am happy to go with you. However, my brother is still waiting. Could you please help him complete the test first? Aizen said with a chuckle. But no one noticed that there was a cold look in the depths of his eyes. Seemed displeased with the examiner for ignoring Lan Yan. Your brother, the examiner, who was completely attracted by Aizen's amazing qualifications, couldn't help turning his head to look at Lan Yan behind him. The same elegant and handsome. The same makes people feel more comfortable. Careless. My younger brother is a genius who is rare to see in 100 years. No matter how bad you want to be an elder brother, you can go anywhere. Fortunately, Aizen reminded me, otherwise I offended two people at once. With this in mind, the examiner sat down again. I'm sorry, these students, I failed my duty. Now please put your hands on the Reiatsu ball. I'm going to test it for you. He even offered to show Lan Yan an apologetic smile. It doesn't matter. Lan Yan smiled lightly and put his hand on the Reiatsu ball. How could he care about the ant's neglect and negligence? What's more, the other party has already been missed by Aizen. It is estimated that in the future, it will either die at the mouth of Manos Grande, or become the material of Hogyoku. Yes, this is the relationship between the two of them. Treat each other like an opponent, and even more like a brother. Brother, no wonder they look somewhat similar. I just don't know how your brother's aptitude is compared to your brother's. Shihuin Yoruichi, Byakuya Kuchiki and others are not in a hurry to leave. With Aizen in front of them, they also want to see what Lan Yan's rating is. For other people from Rukongai, it is not worth their stop, but Lan Yan is worth it. Even if the opponent's final score is not good, but having a genius brother who is rare in a century is enough for them to waste this time. Don't be nervous, just inject Reiatsu into it. It's okay if you can't control Reiatsu, just put your hands on it and relax. The Reiatsu ball will detect itself, it just takes a little longer. Jashiro Yukitaki came over, kindly reminding. Thanks. Lan Yan smiled back, and poured Reiatsu into the crystal ball in his palm. Purple, blue, green, yellow, orange. As the brilliance of the Reiatsu ball gradually changed, the expressions of the candidates, examiners, and Jashiro Yukitaki also changed accordingly. Red. It's red. Oh my god. A double genius. My younger brother is a rare genius, and my elder brother is also a rare genius. The examiner exclaimed. Lan Yan Sosuke. Reiatsu. Captain class. Click. Just when the examiner was announcing Lan Yan's results excitedly, the surface of the shining red crystal ball suddenly cracked and was covered with cracks, spreading out like little snakes, and finally exploded, turning into countless fine cracks. Light shavings. Quote. This scene directly stunned everyone present. Before they came back to their senses, a powerful Reiatsu surged like an invisible wave in an instant. Where Reiatsu swept across, candidates fell down one by one. Some knelt on the ground with their hands on the ground. Some slumped on the ground, unable to get up. Some were even prostrate on the ground, unable to move. Even the examiners in charge of the test fell to the ground one after another. Those who can stand tall are almost all candidates from noble backgrounds. Like Shihuin Yoruichi, like Byakuya Kuchiki, and Urahara Kazuki. Other than that, there were only a handful of commoner geniuses with outstanding spiritual power. Their bodies were staggering, barely holding on to the ground. Soul Society actually produced such a monster. Shihuin Yoruichi's beautiful eyes showed a gleam of splendor. It's not easy, Urahara Kazuki thought to himself. The younger brother is terrible. Brother is also scary. A man of Rukongai origin is actually above me. Byakuya Kuchiki clenched his hands quietly and gritted his teeth secretly. From now on, I have to work harder. He must not lose face to the Kuchiki family. Really, elder brother, on Reiatsu, you've gone ahead of me. Aizen looked at Lan Yan's figure and murmured in his heart. Originally, he didn't intend to expose all Reiatsu. However, after thinking about it later, he changed his mind. Not for anything else, just because he wants to see the gap between himself and Lan Yan. For that, a little exposure and attention grabbing is all worth it. After all, it is better to hide than to hide, and it is better to expose. What kind of Reiatsu is this? The body is like being pressed down by a mountain. Is this really someone from Rukongai, and not a genius from the Four Nobles? At this time, a pair of eyes full of awe converged on Lan Yan. What is his grade? A person with an SSS score is a genius that is rarely seen in 100 years. What about him? A rare genius in 1,000 years. Being pressed to the ground by Reiatsu, the first reaction of most people present was not anger, but curiosity. They all want to know, what is the final score of Lan Yan, who can use Reiatsu to burst the Reiatsu ball and press almost everyone. Your name is Lan Yan, right? Reiatsu, Captain Class. Rating: SSSS level. At the critical moment, Jashiro Yukitaki came to his senses. He looked at Lan Yan with admiration and praise, looked at the strongest genius of Spiritual Arts Academy in the past 2,000 years, and then said a result that had never been achieved since the establishment of Spiritual Arts Academy. SSSS level. Spiritual Arts Academy has never had a rating in 2000. But it's no wonder, that boy named Lan Yan has a captain before he even has a Zanpakuto. No, it's Reiatsu who surpasses ordinary captains. As Jashiro Yukitaki personally rated Lan Yan, there was a huge uproar. How could such a level of genius appear in Rukongai? None of the four great nobles ever owned it. How can it be? Shihuin Yoruichi, Yakuya Kuchiki, Urahara Kazuki and others looked at Lan Yan in disbelief. Of course, Aizen next to him is also in the limelight. It's just that the radiance emanating from Lan Yan's body is too strong, covering most of the brilliance that belongs to him. You two, your enrollment procedures have been completed. I'll take you to the dormitory now. Afterwards, Spiritual Arts Academy will arrange 2 guides for you to familiarize you with everything in the school. The examiner quickly went through the procedures for Lan Yan and Aizen to enter the first-class class, and then, like his subordinates, he walked ahead and opened the way for them. You did it on purpose just now. Lan Yan walked leisurely in the courtyard. Yes, Aizen readily admits. I thought you would hide yourself, develop quietly, and surprise everyone at the right moment. Lan Yan glanced at his younger brother. The only value the program has in existence is to serve me. Compared to seeing you clearly, modifying the original plan is nothing at all. As for things like stunning everyone, you don't need to deliberately hide it, you can do it all the time. Aizen met his brother's gaze. You want to know my depth, can you just say no? Is there still a need to make a special arrangement for this? Could it be that if you open your mouth, I will still keep it from you? Lan Yan shook his head. Compared to me asking, you said, I am more inclined to use my own method. Facing you directly, I can see more clearly. Isn't it? Aizen is obviously smiling, but reveals the arrogance hidden in the depths. He is a genius, and an all-around genius. Whether it's combat, scientific research, or IQ, they're all at the full level. If it is not a pure Shinigami, but like Kurosaki Ichigo, who is born with the blood of Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, and full manifestation, etc., his achievements will have long surpassed the Soul King. Such a person naturally has an innate arrogance. As a human being, you have your own set of principles and principles. He has a lot of methods, not only can see the depth of Lan Yan, but also cannot affect the relationship between the brothers. Facing it directly, seeing it clearly, so what? Lan Yan is naturally aware of the character of his younger brother who is a bully. To keep pace with, or to surpass you. Aizen is outspoken. That's the way their brothers get along, treating each other as very important, but also seeing each other as their only rivals. Facing Aizen's fighting spirit, you felt a certain amount of pressure in your kendo. After practicing hard, you successfully broke through the limit and comprehended the pressure of the sword. The corner of Lan Yan's mouth raised slightly when he heard the suggestion coming from his ear. You are still the same as before, loving and proud. Forget it, if you think so, then don't have any slack. After all, even if you see clearly, it's just me at that moment, not me at this moment. He said a few meaningful words to Bai Wang's younger brother, and then did not delve further into this topic. Grow up. What is yours at this moment surpasses the you at the previous moment. It's just, brother, why am I not? When Aizen heard this, a smile appeared on his face at the same time. It's great to have a brother. In the original time and space, he has been a genius since he was born. Because no one can compare with himself, he feels extremely lonely. He is actively looking for someone who can stand at the same height as him, but he has never been able to find such an object. For this reason, deep in my heart I even long to be an ordinary Shinigami. It is precisely this kind of thinking. After Kurosaki Ichigo, who was raised by himself, cast Wuzuki and surpassed himself, he gave up the idea of continuing to evolve. He is a little afraid that if he evolves again and enters a higher dimension, he will lose those who stand at the same height as him, or even surpass him, and can only continue to feel unparalleled loneliness. But now, Aizen has no such idea at all. The existence of Lan Yan filled the loneliness in his heart. He is not only a brother, but also an opponent who stands at the same height as himself, and even walks ahead. He felt extremely satisfied with this. Spiritual Arts Academy produced a pair of genius brothers. One person has never been in 2,000 years. It is rare to see a person once in 100 years. Such news quickly spread throughout Seraiti. Both the Shinigami nobles and the Gotei 13th Division all got the news. As the chief captain, Yamamoto Genryusai learned all this from Jashiro Yukitake for the first time. Lan Yan, Aizen, I originally thought that it would be extremely rare to have students like you and Chunshui in the establishment of the Spiritual Arts Academy. I never thought that two talented freshmen would be produced at once. It's so similar. It's exactly the same as the situation between you and Chunshui back then. After listening to Jashiro Yukitake's report, Yamamoto Genryusai's rock-like heart had ripples for the first time. A genius who is rare to see in a century is worthy of his attention. Not to mention, there are ordinary people like Lan Yan who have not done any Shinigami practice, but can crush the Reiatsu ball with the help of the naturally grown Reiatsu. This means that the opponent has at least passed the threshold of Muguruma Kensai in terms of Reiatsu strength. Teacher Yuan Lujai, I am not inferior to the two brothers Lan Yan and Aizen. Jashiro Yukitake coughed softly. There's no need to be humble in front of this old man. How much ability do you two have? Doesn't this old man know the teacher? As for them, it is indeed two rare pieces of jade in the rough. Yamamoto Genryusai's voice revealed an unreadable tone. Teacher Yuan Lujai, do you want to accept brother Lan Yan as a disciple? Jashiro Yukitake was surprised when he heard it. Obviously, as a disciple of Yamamoto Genryusai, he tasted his teacher's idea immediately. Maybe it's been a long time since I saw such an outstanding Shinigami brother. The old man did have such a momentary thought. However, we still have to look again. Reiatsu is only part of Shinigami, not all of it. Yamamoto Genryusai holds the cane-shaped Zanpakuto with both hands. I understand, Teacher Yuan Lujai. Tomorrow, I will take them to collect the sealed state. Afterwards, I will teach the course of cutting fists and walking ghosts. Jashiro Yukitake knew what he said. Reiatsu is the root of Shinigami, but not all. Reiatsu is important, but Zanquan Zugi is equally important. Certainly, even more important is Zanpakuto. Say two Shinigami fight. The former has the strongest Zanpakuto of a certain department, and the latter just holds an ordinary Zanpakuto, as long as the Reiatsu of both sides is not several times, or even 10 times the difference. Whether it is victory or defeat, or potential, the former is better. The meaning of Yamamoto Genryusai, Jashiro Yukitake could not be more clear. If Lan Yan and Aizen have outstanding talents in Zanquan Zugi, and their Zanpakuto ability is also extremely powerful, then the matter of recruiting apprentices is no longer an idea, but will be implemented. On the contrary, it is a fleeting thought. Like a shooting star flying through the sky, it only exists in an instant. The next day, Jashiro Yukitake came to Spiritual Arts Academy early. Whether it is about the acceptance of Yamamoto Genryusai, or the fact that Shinigami geniuses like Brother Lan Yan have emerged from the first class of this class, he attaches great importance to it. As your main subject teacher, please allow me to introduce myself. I am Jashiro Yukitaki. It's a great honor to stand here and form a teacher-student friendship with you. Jashiro Yukitaki walked into the department of the first-class class, behaved in a polite manner, without the slightest bit of high airs of the veteran Shinigami captain. He introduced himself while looking around the room. Most are of noble origin. Only a very few, such as Tusen Kanami, Tianbei Shusuke and others are from Rukongai. After taking a panoramic view of everyone in the class, his eyes finally settled on Brother Lan Yan sitting in the back row. Next, the person whose name is called, please follow me. I will take you there to collect your sealed state. This is about your Zanpakuto, please do not lose or underestimate it. Jashiro Yukitaki holds a list of students and reads out the names one by one. Lan Yan Sosuke, Aizen Sosuke, Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, ... As the names were read out one by one, all the students from Rukongai soon came out. Really, an unliberated Zanpakuto like the sealed state, as long as it is a Shinigami of noble origin, it will be available from an early age. Lan Yan sees everything in his eyes. A corrupt and ignorant system. If the sealed state is made public, the number of Shinigami in Seraiti can be doubled at least several times. Aizen shook his head secretly. Jashiro, can we follow along? At this time, Shihuin Yoruichi, who was restless, stood up. If you want to have nothing to do in his class, you might as well go and watch the excitement. Sure, if any students are interested, they can also come together. Also, Yoruichi-san, please call me sensei or Jashiro-sensei. Jashiro Yukitaki nodded, not forgetting to remind the careless Shihuin Yoruichi. Understood, Jashiro. Shihuin Yoruichi said he remembered. PLZ follow me. Seeing this, Jashiro Yukitaki could only shake his head, of course he didn't care. After all, Shihuin Yoruichi is not only the young patriarch of Shihuin, one of the four nobles, but also has the potential to become the captain of Shinigami. With such a background and ability, he can skip the Spiritual Arts Academy and directly enter the second team, serving as the third seat or even the vice captain. After a few years, after mastering Bankai, you can become the captain immediately. Sit on an equal footing with him. Now, it is better to say that you have come to be gilded than to learn. Putting the Spiritual Arts Academy logo on will help take over the second division in the hands of Yamamoto Genryusai. Under the guidance of Jashiro Yukitaki, Lan Yan and his party soon came to an ancient building that was sealed, or protected, by Kido. Open. Jashiro Yukitaki stretched out his hand and pressed Reiatsu, who started from the west with 18 car punches. Although it was fleeting, like a flash in the pan, it was still moving. Especially Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin et al. Even Urahara Kazuki and others were slightly moved. Lan Yan and Aizen are the only ones who can still talk and laugh happily and turn a blind eye. After all, Shiba-Che's boxing is strong, but it's not enough to make them lose face. Captain Jashiro. As the attic door where the sealed state was stored opened, the two Shinigami guarding inside immediately stepped forward to salute. No need to be too polite, I brought them here to collect the sealed state. Jashiro Yukitaki handed over a list with a chuckle. The latter took it, glanced at it, and immediately moved several sealed states, that is, Zanpakuto that was not liberated. Sealed state is the same, regardless of high or low quality. After receiving it, you will write your own spirit, belief, and one-shot Reiatsu into it, accompany you day and night, sleep and eat together, so as to create your own and unique Zanpakuto. Choose whatever you want. Jashiro Yukitaki did not force the distribution of sealed state, but asked Lan Yan and others to come forward to collect it. Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, Tianbei Shoju and others all showed anticipation and excitement after hearing this. After all, Zanpakuto is a symbol that determines Shinigami and ordinary people. Of course, not everyone came forward to receive it. Both Lan Yan and Aizen stood still. Brother, I just heard a voice. He disdains and doesn't want me to take the sealed state in front of me. Aizen glanced over the sealed states, his eyes under the lens flickered, and then whispered in Lan Yan's ear. As the most intelligent Shinigami in Soul Society. From just one conversation with Zanpakuto, he yields a wealth of information. The sealed state in front of me may be fine and will not affect itself, but there are some unknown things hidden. Sound. Without receiving the sealed state, did you create your own Zanpakuto with your own ability? As expected of a king. Lan Yan was slightly startled when he heard this, but immediately took it for granted. Even Hitsugaya Toshiro could hear Hiranmaru's voice before enrolling in Spiritual Arts Academy. There's no reason why the king who pressed Xiaobai on the ground and rubbed him casually couldn't do it. Combining with the original work, he found that as long as Shinigami possesses apex qualifications and the strongest name Zanpakuto, they can create Zanpakuto by nature without relying on sealed state. Hitsugaya Toshiro is so. Aizen Sosuke is so. The same goes for the future Kurosaki Ichigo. In the same way, before the sealed state was created by Ermewu Wengyu, the members of the Zero Division who had Zanpakuto, as well as the ancestors of the four great nobles, etc. were the same. After learning that Aizen can hear the voice of your own Zanpakuto, your Zanpakuto said that no one can be better than you, so he offered to send it to your door. Just when Lan Yan was amazed at the talent of forcing the king, a sound rang in his ears. Immediately afterwards, the waves of Reiatsu in the body are undulating, rushing to the palm like a great river, as if something is coming out from the deepest part of the soul. Sensing the sudden change in Reiatsu behind him, Jashiro Yukitaki turned his head abruptly, his eyes fixed on Lan Yan. Call out! Wisps of golden light burst out from Lan Yan's palm, and immediately a Zanpakuto, which was very similar in appearance to Tang Hengdao, with a straight blade and no curvature, flew out of the golden light and fell into his palm. What? Seeing this, Jashiro Yukitaki's pupils constricted, and his heart was overwhelmed. That's Zanpakuto. How can it be? Can Zanpakuto be created with Reiatsu alone without a sealed state? Seeing this scene, Urahara Kazuki, Yakuya Kuchiki and other noble-born Shinigami all changed their expressions in horror. It is precisely because of noble origin that they know better what it means to have Zanpakuto without relying on a sealed state. On the contrary, people from Rukongai such as Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, etc., looked dazed and didn't understand what the Zanpakuto in Lan Yan's palm represented. Zanpakuto, brother, you took another step forward. Then, it's time for you to come out too. Or are you going to hold me back and let me lag behind my brother? Seeing that Lan Yan likes to mention Zanpakuto, Aizen is more convinced of his judgment. The sealed state in front of you cannot be taken, otherwise there will be some problems out of control without your knowledge. However, he was also a little dissatisfied with the voice in his heart. If you don't want to take it, then walk out by yourself. He was happy that Lan Yan was able to create Zanpakuto without a sealed state, but he didn't like the fact that his own Zanpakuto didn't appear for a long time. Call out seems to be responding to Aizen in general. With the lingering purple light, a brand new Zanpakuto came out and fell into his palm. Since he chose to show his true talent when he entered school, he naturally would not deliberately hide it. Of course, it is necessary to have reservations, such as one's own ability. However, even with reservations, it is enough to shock the Soul Society. As expected of a king. Fortunately, Zanpakuto is fighting for himself, otherwise it would be really not easy to be your brother. Aizen. Lan Yan saw that his younger brother had Zanpakuto without a sealed state after him, and he was amazed in his heart. If it is said that his achievement is due to cheating, and he is very competitive in every ability, which is why he is far ahead, then Aizen is purely based on aptitude. Although he has been lagging behind himself, whenever he grows, Aizen will always catch up behind him with his unparalleled talent. Definitely not too far behind. I am Aizen all my life, not weaker than others. Holding Zanpakuto in hand, Aizen greeted Lan Yan. A smile flashed across the eyes of the two brothers under the lens. This feeling of chasing each other is so good. First Lan Yan, then Aizen. This pair of brothers, it's just a monster. Shihuin Yoruichi murmured. This kind of thing, I thought it was just a legend. Byakuya Kuchiki held Zanpakuto's 5 fingers slightly. Excuse me, is there something wrong? Tianbei Shoju keenly noticed that all the Shinigami who came from aristocratic backgrounds were dignified and shocked without exception. Oh, it's nothing more. It's just Gote 132,000 years, no one has ever had a Zanpakuto without using the sealed state. Urahara Kazuki explained in a very casual tone. What? Hearing this, Tusen Kanami and Tianbei Shoju, who were still immersed in the emotion of winning Zanpakuto just now, changed their expressions. Kazuki, it's okay to call it nothing. It is said that the Shinigami who can own Zanpakuto without relying on the sealed state, without exception, have left a strong mark in the history of the Soul Society. Not only is his spiritual power powerful, but Zanpakuto himself is extraordinary. Shihoin Yoruichi kicked Urahara Kazuki aside. Hey, doesn't that mean that not only are they strong themselves, but even Zanpakuto is not easy? Komamura Sajin couldn't help asking. According to the historical records of the Soul Society, it is true. Jashiro Yukitake took a deep look at Lan Yan and Aizen. Originally, he wanted to spy out the depth of brother Lan Yan through the sealed state, but now he doesn't have to. Let's not talk about Zanquan Zugi. Even if you don't look at Shikai's ability, just relying on his own strength to create Zanpakuto, he can be sure that the Zanpakuto ability of this pair of genius brothers is absolutely extremely powerful. Because in his memory, Yamamoto Genryusai, who created Zanpakuto, also does not rely on the sealed state, has the oldest and most powerful Zanpakuto in the hot department. Even if Zanquan Zugi can't reach the level of Sensei Genryusai, with their aptitude and Zanpakuto ability, their future achievements will be higher than me and Jingle. This time, teacher Yuan Lujai found out, and I'm afraid he can't help but want to recruit disciples again. Thinking of this, Jashiro Yukitake couldn't help feeling happy for the Gotei 13th Division. Although he is also of noble origin, but because he is a disciple of Yamamoto Genryusai, his heart is towards Gotei 13. Aizen is not weaker than others all his life. After your Zanpakuto heard it, he said that the younger brother is the younger brother, and decided to tell you that he, the first Soul Society, and the name of the strongest light is Zanpakuto, and asked you to remember it in your heart. Just when Jashiro Yukitake was secretly happy and planned to tell Yamamoto Genryusai immediately after class, Lan Yan heard the voice from Zanpakuto again. Then, a name belonging to Zanpakuto emerged from the bottom of my heart. Zanpakuto seemed to be afraid that he couldn't hear clearly, and his voice was as loud as thunder on the ground. It made his ears ring. Bang! A loud noise, like a thunderbolt from the blue sky, exploded in everyone's ears. At the same time, with Lan Yan as the center, golden streamers rush out like a torrent. In a blink of an eye, countless golden lights gathered, surrounded the whole body, and finally turned into a beam of light that pierced the sky, connecting Spiritual Arts Academy with the sky of Seraiti, and it lasted for a long time. Boom! The sudden Reiatsu beam of light not only connected to the sky, but also released a majestic coercion and storm. Anyone who was in the same area as Lan Yan, except for Jashiro Yukitake and Aizen, including Urahara Kazuki, Shihoin Yoruichi, and Byakuya Kuchiki, were all thrown back and forth by the raging Reiatsu storm. Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin and other future Shinigami captains who had just obtained the sealed state and hadn't practiced fist-slashing ghost training were all blown off the ground, flying backwards like cannonballs, and embedded in the walls one by one. Lan Yan, could it be you? Tell me quickly, did you hear something just now? Jashiro Yukitake looked around, fixedly staring at Lan Yan who was bathed in the beam of light soaring into the sky, like a god descending from heaven. His tone revealed rare anxiety and expectation. Is there a sound? That's right, I did hear a voice whispering to me just now, telling his name, and I remembered it in my heart. Lan Yan didn't expect such a big commotion. I also blame my own Zanpakuto for being too competitive. Seeing that my younger brother also has a Zanpakuto, he actually practiced Shikai himself, and he is also the most fashionable Soul Society and the strongest light system Zanpakuto. I was also afraid that he couldn't hear clearly, like a magic voice piercing my ears, and whispered to him frantically, and then I was afraid that he would not be able to learn Shikai, so I said Shikai again in front of his face. Whispering names again. It's Shikai teaching again. Really are. Only by myself. Create Zanpakuto. In another day, no, in an instant, hear the name of Zanpakuto, Master Shikai. Although Jashiro Yukitake was mentally prepared, when he heard Lan Yan say this, he still couldn't help being slightly shocked, and even his eyes went dark, and his brain froze briefly. After recovering, he couldn't help taking a deep breath. As the captain of Gotei 13, he even forgot how long he hadn't lost his composure like he is now. Shikai. This monster. The growth rate is too fast. Shihoin Yoruichi, Urahara Kazuki, and others all changed their expressions, and all cast unbelievable gazes at Lan Yan at the same time. They have a sealed state since then, and practice Shinigami. 10 years is one day, never neglected. But even so, it took several years before I heard Zanpakuto's name and successfully mastered Shikai. But what about Lan Yan? Create your own Zanpakuto without a sealed state. However, make persistent efforts and comprehend Shikai in an instant. Reiatsu and Shikai, who are equipped with 7 chariots, are almost the same as Captain Shinigami except that they don't know Zonquan Zugi and Bankai. Shikai, I see, that voice is Zanpakuto, and knowing his name is Shikai. So, what's your name? Aizen was slightly surprised. Not to be outdone, he immediately asked Zanpakuto's name in his heart. Mirror, flower. However, he concentrated on listening, but he still only heard 2 intermittent sounds, but he couldn't make out what came after. Incomplete name, Sashikai is also incomplete. Is it because I am not worthy to hear your name? Or, you're not going to tell me your name? After trying several times, but still only hearing the word, mirror flower, Aizen's eyes flashed with dissatisfaction. Not for Zanpakuto, but for yourself. He was very dissatisfied with his size, so much behind Lan Yan, he could only hear the incomplete name of Zanpakuto and grasp the incomplete Shikai. You have stepped into a higher realm. It seems that I slack off. After a short dissatisfaction, Aizen cut off the meaningless emotion. I just decided in my heart. 3 days. He only gave himself 3 days, and Zanpakuto only 3 days. At that time, either master the Zanpakuto's Shikai, or destroy the Zanpakuto with your own hands. He only accepts submission, Zanpakuto for his own use, and destroys those who disobey him. He doesn't allow himself to be behind Lan Yan all the time. If he can't hear Zanpakuto's name clearly, then he doesn't want Zanpakuto and goes another way. What about you, Aizen? Jashiro Yukitake took a few deep breaths, trying to regain his composure. Only then did he remember the existence of another genius. I've let you down, Jashiro-sensei. Compared to my brother, I only heard an incomplete name. Come to think of it, Shikai is also incomplete. Facing Jashiro Yukitake's inquiry, Aizen showed apology. Now that I have changed my plan and no longer play an ordinary genius, I will play a rare genius who is humble, polite, and honest. Of course, how frank this candor is and how much it will depend on his thoughts. Did you hear that too? No, how could I be disappointed? You did a great job. At your age, teacher, I can't even see your back clearly. Jashiro Yukitake said hastily. Disappointment. In one day, the older brother, hearing Zanpakuto's name, learned Shikai. The younger brother learned incomplete Shikai in one day. He would wake up with a smile in his dreams. How could he be disappointed? Mr. Jashiro, you are too well respected, and I am ashamed of you. Aizen smiled humbly. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. About Zanpakuto's Shikai, everyone's situation is different, and I can only teach you some sword Zen experience, which will help you communicate with Zanpakuto. Also, after learning and practicing Zonquan Zugi, you should be able to hear the name of Zanpakuto very quickly. Seeing that Aizen is so humble and honest, Jashiro Yukitake is not stingy about passing on sword Zen, that is, the skills and experience of talking with Zanpakuto to him. This kind of cultivation method is not rare among nobles. But for those of Rukongai origin, that is priceless. Thank you. Aizen had a grateful smile on his face. Sword Zen. Enter the spirit world and meet Zanpakuto face to face. It's kind of interesting. He decided to meet his own Zanpakuto tonight, and then use the sword to talk and ask the other party to tell him his name. Okay, gentlemen, now that you have obtained the sealed state, and you have a general understanding of the relationship between Shikai and Zanpakuto's name, then work hard towards this direction. Mastering the speed of Shikai does not determine the final height of a Shinigami. Jashiro Yukitake saw that Tianbei Shusuke, Komamura Sajin and others were beaten repeatedly by the Lan Yan brothers, and they were a little depressed, so they immediately spoke out to encourage them. No way, one Sosuke can overwhelm the entire Soul Society. Not to mention, there are now 2. And a Sosuke is stronger than a Sosuke. Not to mention Tusen Konami, Komamura Sajin and others, even noble children like Shihuin Yoruichi and Byakuya Kuchiki are a little numb. Yes, Mr. Jashiro. With Jashiro Yukitake's continuous encouragement, everyone's faces looked better. Masters, please follow me. This morning is Kido class, and this afternoon is culture class. Next, I will teach you how to use Kido to fight Manos Grande. After distributing the sealed state, Jashiro Yukitake led everyone to a training ground. If you are a student from another class, in the first Kido class, you can only memorize the chant in the classroom honestly, and then you can practice. But all the students in the first class have the potential to become captains of Shinigami. Even if you are born in Rukongai and have never been exposed to Shinigami practice, you still don't need to stay in the classroom to recite chant. After all, even if you are new to Kido, as long as your spiritual power is strong enough, your talent is high enough, and you know the essence of Kido's spells, you can directly cast Hado and Bakudo below number 10 without chanting. As the veteran captain of Gote 13, Jashiro Yukitake, who has been a teacher for more than 100 years, naturally understands the principle of teaching students according to their aptitude. Kido, that is, a high-level spell that only Shinigami can use, and is divided into Hado, Bakudo, and Kaido. Hado is the lord of attack and destruction, Bakudo is the lord of binding and imprisonment, Kaido is the lord of healing. Today we will learn about Hado first. In a spacious training ground, Jashiro Yukitake stood in front of many students, explaining the essence of Hado, Bakudo, and Kaido clearly in a few words. In addition, everyone who can be selected into this class is a 1 in a million genius, and there is no need to explain any knowledge questions about Kido a second time. Just once, everyone remembers it in their hearts, and what's more, people such as Urahara Kazuki, and the future Grand Kido Chief Tessai Tsukubishi, etc., all draw inferences from one instance. One of Hado Chong. Jashiro Yukitake stretched out his index finger, and immediately Reiatsu rushed out from his fingertips, turning into a shock wave, piercing through a wooden stake 10 meters away. Although it is the lowest level Hado, it still has great power in the hands of the veteran Shinigami captain. A person with strong enough spiritual power and excellent control ability can completely abandon the complicated chanting process and directly cast Hado. The same goes for Bakudo and Kaido. Okay, then you can practice freely. After casting Hado, who had cast away the chant and the full chant, Jashiro Yukitake let everyone practice Kido freely. After all, qualifications are here. He only needs to explain the knowledge points that should be taught once, and he doesn't need to worry about the rest. The students in front of him will give him a satisfactory answer. Kido. It's not difficult. Lan Yan put down a book in his hand that recorded Kido numbers 1 to 60 in detail, and was just about to choose a wooden stake to practice like everyone else around him, when a dissatisfied voice suddenly came to his ears. Your Kido is very powerful, and you will never be allowed to intervene in his cultivation. Your Kido said, if you come to practice, let the table next door Zanpakudo and Kendo see it. They thought he couldn't practice it. In order to prove his ability to you, he practiced crazily and successfully took Hado and Bakudo from numbers 1 to 60. All practiced. Lan Yan paused, and he sat down again when he wanted to get up. Originally, he wanted to rely on himself, but Kido was too strong and had a good face. He was afraid of being laughed at by Zanpakudo and Kendo at the next table, so he didn't give him a chance to work hard, so he practiced all the Kido from 1 to 60 on the spot. He even suspects that learning all Hado and Bakudo from 1 to 60 in one breath is not the limit of his Kido, but that the book in his hand only records Hado and Bakudo from 1 to 60. Hado 4. White Thunder. Hado's 11. Thunder and Lightning. Hado's 12. Fuhuo. Jashiro Yukitake looked around and saw that each student was getting better in Hado practice, especially Tessai Tsukubishi, who was born in Rukongai and only came into contact with Kido today, but he showed extraordinary Kido aptitude. In just half an hour, I have already practiced Hado on the 15th, and I have also managed to abandon the chant, and the power is no worse than the full chant. It is only a matter of time before catching up with Byakuya Kuchiki, Shihu and Yoruichi, who have been practicing Shinigami since childhood. This is talent. No matter how good the background is, it is difficult to make up and surpass it. Jashiro Yukitake patrolled around, and when his eyes swept over Lan Yan, he stopped immediately. He thought that the strongest genius of the Spiritual Arts Academy since 2000 was going to surprise himself like Zanpakudo in the Kido class, but unexpectedly found an open space to enjoy the coolness under the shade of trees. Student Lan Yan, is there anything I can do for you? Like Hado, is there anything else you don't understand? You can tell me everything. Jashiro Yukitake was puzzled, so he stepped forward to ask. If it was another teacher, He would have thrown chalk when he encountered such a lazy student, but he didn't. Not only because of his good temper and patience, but also because he knows Lan Yan's qualifications well. Thanks, but Jashiro-sensei, there's nothing I don't understand. Lan Yan shook his head and smiled lightly. Then why don't you practice Kido? Look, everyone else is practicing, even Aizen. As an older brother, you have to set a good example for your younger brother. Jashiro Yukitake also thought that Lan Yan possessed extraordinary aptitude, so he became too conceited and didn't take Kido's cultivation seriously. The conversation between the two quickly attracted the attention of Urahara Kazuki, Byakuya Kuchiki and others who were practicing Kido around them. Your Kido said that cultivation is under his control, and that if you intervene, let the next door Zanpakudo, swordsmanship. Seriously, Jashiro-sensei, I want to practice, but my strength doesn't allow me. So, please ask the teacher to put your mind and time on other students who need help more. Lan Yan saw that Jashiro Yukitake spoke with sincerity and earnestness, as if you don't practice, I will continue to persuade you. Feeling helpless, I had no choice but to pretend to be a wave, and then let Jashiro Yukitake teach other students who needed more teaching. For example, Tusen Kanami from Rukongai and others. After all, he has tried many times and negotiated many times, but his Kido is too strong and too good-faced to allow it. Whenever he wanted to practice, Kido immediately jumped out and strongly refused. He warned that cultivation is his Kido's business and has nothing to do with Lan Yan. Even directly threatened, said that if he was ridiculed by Zanpakudo and Kendo next door because of his unauthorized practice, he would go on strike and would not practice Hado and Bakudo in the future. Kido said so. What can Lan Yan say? He is also very helpless, he can only enjoy the coolness under the shade of a tree, and let Kido practice by himself. What an arrogant guy. Even the Kuchiki family, who have been exposed to Zonquan-zugi since childhood, dare not say such big words. I advise you to be more cautious from now on, and don't act rashly. Not far away, Byakuya Kuchiki, who was meticulously practicing Hado, heard this, the corners of his eyes twitched slightly, and his face showed a bit of displeasure. You, Lan Yan, have strength, but I don't. Otherwise, he can pretend not to hear. But what Lan Yan said made Jashiro Yukitake put his mind and time on other students, and he was so angry that he couldn't pretend that nothing happened. Thank you for your advice. However, things like Kido don't need to be practiced too much. It's useful to practice early. Because there is one thing in this world called talent. It can smooth out time, hard work, and your proud background. Lan Yan glanced at the young and arrogant Byakuya Kuchiki, who was short-tempered, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, revealing a slight smile. Hearing Lan Yan bluntly saying that his talent is not as good as that of the other party, and lightly talking about the existence of the Kuchiki family, Byakuya Kuchiki's face was a little ugly. He was trained by the Kuchiki family as the next patriarch since he was a child, and the most praise he heard was genius and talent. But these things that he took for granted in the past, now in front of Lan Yan, have become so bleak. Whether it was testing Reiatsu yesterday or receiving the sealed state not long ago, he knew clearly that there was a huge gap between himself and Lan Yan, whether it was Reiatsu or Zanpakudo. What happened? Why did little Byakuya and Lan Yan quarrel? That guy is a bit too glassy, right? But it's a bit crazy. You say, what will happen in the end? Seeing the verbal conflict between the two, Shihuen Yoruichi, Urahara Kazuki and others not only did not come to dissuade them, but ate melons wantonly. Talent. Well, since that's the case, I really want to know what is the talent you talk about. It actually makes you say wild words, dare to say lightly what kind of existence the Kuchiki family is. Byakuya Kuchiki took a slight breath. Your Kido said that the person named Sosuke must learn to pretend to be forceful, otherwise you will overturn. He decided to wish you a helping hand. After serious practice, he has practiced all Hado and Bakudo in the 1-60 abandonment chant version. Seeing his own Kido being so defensive, Lan Yan couldn't help but like it. It is both strong and caring. After all, if you talk about pretense, of course you have to abandon the singing version of Kido. How do you want to learn? Lan Yan glanced at Byakuya Kuchiki, and did not get up from the ground, but slowly raised his hand, palm pointing directly at the sky of Spiritual Arts Academy. This move made the students who were watching melons widen their eyes and their faces were full of curiosity. Solve it the Shinigami way. Are you talking about the Kuchiki family? Then there will be a contest between the Kido. Byakuya Kuchiki spoke word by word. As you wish. A smile flashed across Lan Yan's eyes. Senior Jashiro, please serve as the referee. Of course, if you don't mind teaching one less student from now on, then you don't have to participate. Byakuya Kuchiki looked at Jashiro Yukitake. It's really a little kid, and an impatient child. All right, if I think the outcome has been decided, I will immediately end this fight. Seeing this, Jashiro Yukitake also knew that they could only fight one game. At the same time, he was also a little curious in his heart, whether Lan Yan was exaggerating as Byakuya Kuchiki said, or whether it was really as the other party said, strength does not allow it. Whatever. Byakuya Kuchiki dropped 2 words, then turned his head and looked at Lan Yan. Aren't you up yet? Seeing that Lan Yan was still sitting under the shade of a tree enjoying the cool air, and he didn't show any intention of getting up, his brows were furrowed. Isn't it to learn from Kido? It's not about swordsmanship. There's no need to do that. Lan Yan shook his head. If your purpose was to anger me, then I can tell you right now that you did it. Byakuya Kuchiki's eyes turned cold, and he raised his hand in a hurry, pointed his palm at Lan Yan, and chanted quickly in his mouth. O King's Lander, the mask of flesh and blood, the Vientiane, the thing that soars high, and the name of man. Truth and temperance, the wall of the dream of innocence, stand only on it. It was Hado who was number 33 at the beginning, and the faces of all people from Rukongai, such as Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, Tianbei Shoju, etc., suddenly changed. Hado on the 33rd, even if it is fully chanted, they cannot cast it now. This is the head of the 4 nobles. Is it the Kuchiki's house? His start is the end of many people. Tusen Kanami's heart sank. Byakuya Kuchiki used the number 33 Hado, which made him experience the power of the nobility firsthand. Just a young boy has such power. How difficult it would be if you wanted revenge. Hado's 33. Kango pendant. Just when everyone was amazed at the strength of Byakuya Kuchiki, he had already finished the chant within a few seconds, and bursts of blue explosive flames burst out from his palm, which branched in all directions like tree branches, and then flew towards Lan Yan together through the air. Unexpected, even if it's Hado on the 33rd, I can get it at my fingertips. Don't worry, I will leave room for this blow, it will only hurt you and not die, because I want you to prostrate on the ground, under the torment of pain and the shame of defeat, repent that you shouldn't speak lightly of the Kuchiki family. After the fire fell, Byakuya Kuchiki put his hands back and stood on the spot, showing the victor's attitude in every word and deed. Apparently, he didn't think Lan Yan could withstand his own Hado at all. No matter how strong Reiatsu is, if you can't use it, it's useless. Nothing but beating. Bang! With a flash of blue light, the blazing explosive flames turned into a majestic explosive impact, instantly submerging Lan Yan. Senior Jashiro, it's time for you to prepare Kaido. If you don't know how to do it, then hurry up and inform the 4th team. With his Reiatsu strength, there should be a chance to save. Byakuya Kuchiki turned his head away, not looking at the explosion at all, and said to Jashiro Yukitake by himself. Is it the blue fire drop? Go light the candles on the birthday cake. Kuchiki, classmate. However, before Jashiro Yukitake could say anything, a playful voice came out of the smoke. You, obviously fell into my blue fire pendant, how could there be nothing wrong? Byakuya Kuchiki turned his head suddenly, only to see the smoke dissipate, and Lan Yan, who had endured the fire fall, was still sitting in the shade of the tree, with a mocking smile on his face. The battle between Shinigami is the battle of Reiatsu. Slashing the fist and walking the ghost is just to maximize the effect of Reiatsu. With the Hado used by your Reiatsu, I can suppress them all with my Reiatsu. Lan Yan admired Byakuya Kuchiki's gradually changing face, and then raised his hand, a golden light gradually emerged from his body. Bang! The overwhelming Reiatsu spread out in all directions like a torrent, submerging everyone including Byakuya Kuchiki in an instant. Is this really Reiatsu? It's even stronger than yesterday's entrance examination. Bones are crunching under pressure. Is he stronger, or does he have reservations? Except for Aizen, who can show a calm posture under the overwhelming golden torrent of Reiatsu waves, including Urahara Kazuki, who hides the deepest, everyone's face suddenly changed, like a negative mountain. The nobleman was crushed and his body trembled slightly. The one from Rukongai was directly crushed and his knees were slightly bent. As strong as Byakuya Kuchiki, his face was slightly pale, his breathing was heavy and rapid, and his muscles were tense, trying his best to fight against this majestic Reiatsu. Move, move, my body, Byakuya Kuchiki roared wildly in his heart. However, his limbs were all dead, facing his shouts and roars, and facing his calls and commands, there was no sign of responding at all. Let him stand there blankly like a string puppet. Watching helplessly, Lan Yan stretched out his index finger and tapped lightly in the air. Hado no. For white thunder. The voice just fell. The sound of thunder, like the roar of 10,000 beasts, shook the entire venue. At the same time, dazzling blue and white brilliance bloomed, and a slender white thunder burst out from Lan Yan's fingertips, shooting towards Byakuya Kuchiki. I'm the heir to the Kuchiki family, one of the 4 great nobles. Are you going to lose to Hado, who is only number 4? Byakuya Kuchiki looked at the flying baile, his pupils continued to dilate, and he felt a strong unwillingness and an unprecedented depression in his heart. He can't believe it. In front of Lan Yan's Reiatsu, the body was crushed and could not move. He couldn't take it. Such a humiliating defeat. Bang! Lan Yan withdrew his index finger and stopped looking at Byakuya Kuchiki. Those who lose to him are never worthy of his eyes. Not to mention, a person he has never regarded as an opponent. Kido said he was very satisfied with your pretense this time. He was in a good mood and went to practice again, and he became a double abandonment chant. He can cast 2 Hado at the same time while abandoning the chant, or it is Bakudo. Your Reiatsu pretended to be aggressive to you and did not forget to bring him along, expressing his pleasure, so he decided to tell you a piece of news. He just had a breakthrough on a whim, which is equivalent to the height of Hachish Kenshi. Hearing that Kido and Reiatsu rushed to announce the good news, Lan Yan couldn't help but be happy. I didn't expect to gain something by pretending to be aggressive. I have to say that my Kido and Reiatsu are too motivated, they don't forget their original aspirations, and they are practicing all the time. But after this battle, he can see that his Reiatsu, swordsmanship, Kido, and even Zanpakuto are all the masters who fear the world will not be chaotic. Even if you want to keep a low profile, these guys won't allow it. The other side. Slap. There was a sound of heavy objects falling to the ground, and under the unbelievable gazes, Byakuya Kuchiki sat slumped on the ground with a pale face dripping with cold sweat. After realizing that the Reiatsu that made him feel like a mountain had dissipated, he slowly turned his head, and his eyes were fixed on the gully where the slightest electric arc remained at his feet. Starting from the foot, it extends all the way to 100 meters away. It's clearly the number 4 low-level Hado, but whether it's power or momentum, it crushes the number 33 Hado that he just chanted completely. Kengo Fall. Talent. Looking at the 100-meter-long gap, Byakuya Kuchiki clenched his hands and grasped the 2 piles of loess on the ground, feeling overwhelmed and unable to calm down for a long time. This is the first time. When facing Lan Yan, even the Kuchiki family is meaningless in front of Lan Yan. Although he immediately suppressed it, it was like a seed that was quietly planted in the deepest part of my heart. Is this really the 4th of Hado, Shirai? Tessai Tsukubishi murmured. The 4th of Hado, Baile, even if he first came into contact with Kido, he can give up the chant and cast it without any loss of power. However, he was determined not to be able to do it, and played the low-level Hado of number 4 with the breaking power of number 60 and above. No matter in terms of distance or destructive power, his White Thunder is no worse than the captain-level Shinigami, and even stronger than some captains who are weaker than Reiatsu. Jashiro Yukitaki also had an unconcealable look of astonishment on his face. As a veteran captain, he knows better than anyone else how high the gold content of this White Thunder is. Properly Shinigami captain level, even he wouldn't dare to take a shot. Reiatsu is better than yesterday. Together with Shikai, and all Hado and Bakudo recorded in books. Brother, your pace is getting faster and faster. Aizen looked at his brother quietly, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes under the lens. He knew that he should speed up. In this fight, I saw a lot of clues, and felt a lot of pressure in my heart, but he immediately turned it into motivation. Fundamentals to help oneself grow rapidly. With Reiatsu alone, little Byakuya was pinned down to the point of being unable to move. A shot of white thunder is almost like a high-level Hado. This monster, does his talent have no limit? Shihuin Yoruichi couldn't believe it. Beat Byakuya Kuchiki, she can do it too. With the lightning-fast Shunpo, he can even end the battle with one blow at this stage. Comparable to Lan Yan, there is no comparison at all. Lan Yan, have you practiced all the number 60 Hado and no 60 Bakudo recorded in the first part of the Kido Encyclopedia, and you can perform them without singing? While everyone was still immersed in the shock of Lan Yan crushing Byakuya Kuchiki with a snap of his fingers, Jashiro Yukitaki suddenly spoke out and asked a question that touched everyone's minds. Including Aizen. Yes. Facing Jashiro Yukitaki's fiery gaze, Lan Yan nodded without hiding anything. As for retaining some strength as a whole card, there is no need for this at all. Just because he is getting stronger every minute. A minute later, he will be stronger than he was a minute ago. Every minute that passes, will be a whole card. Therefore, the act of hiding strength is meaningless. After all, someone really wanted to harm him. If he collected information and prepared what he thought was enough combat power, the operation had already failed before it even started. Because at that time, Lan Yan's strength was already much stronger than the intelligence collected by the enemy. What? How long has it been? Less than half an hour. He has learned everything. Hearing Lan Yan's answer, everyone felt their scalps go numb. As for questioning, no one would do that at all, not even the idea. Just because Bailei and Byakuya Kuchiki's disastrous defeat just now are the best proof. Sure enough, that's why you didn't practice Kido like everyone else just now, but instead let me teach other students. Because you've already done it all. Jashiro Yukitaki was prepared, but still shocked. With such qualifications, if he grows up in the future, he is destined to be the best candidate to take over the position of captain, or enter the Zero team. That's right. Lan Yan leaned against the tree and nodded. There is one thing to say, although what Jashiro Yukitaki said is not entirely correct, but it is not far behind. I just didn't expect the boy version of Byakuya Kuchiki to be so violent, feeling offended and belittled, and would get angry at the slightest disagreement. I was careless. I didn't expect you to learn so quickly. However, it's class time after all. Even if you have practiced everything, it's not good to sit like this all the time. Well, I'll let someone bring you the second part of the Kido Encyclopedia. Jashiro Yukitaki suppressed the shock in his heart, pondered for a while, and ordered someone to bring the complete Kido Encyclopedia. It records Hado and Bakudo from 60 to 99. If the first part is a low-level Kido, then the second part is a high-level Kido. Originally, he thought that even with Lan Yan's talent, it would take the second half of the year to use it. Unexpectedly, it came in handy on the first day of school, and the first Kido class. Lan Yan, I still underestimated his talent. I thought it would take him about 9 months to graduate from Spiritual Arts Academy early, but now it seems that it should only take half a year. Jashiro Yukitaki looked at Lan Yan, who took over the Kido Encyclopedia Part 2 from himself, and couldn't help thinking. You can get Kido Encyclopedia Part 2, your Kido is very happy, but you want to intervene in his cultivation, he doesn't like it. Hearing the sound coming from his ear, Lan Yan immediately snuffed out the newly born idea of wanting to personally use no 60 Hado and Bakudo to experience his addiction to cultivation. Compared to satisfying his momentary itching and getting Kido to strike, he would rather endure it and let Kido practice by himself. Your Kido has read the second chapter of the Kido Encyclopedia, and after practicing without distraction, he has practiced Bakudo's 61 six-stick light prison by himself. After realizing that Lan Yan no longer intervenes in Kido's cultivation, his Kido seems to know how to control the master technique. He just expressed his dissatisfaction, and immediately threw a freshly baked no 61 Bakudo into his face with his backhand. I just put down the first part of the Kido Encyclopedia, and Kido has already practiced Bakudo and Hado from 1 to 60. Now I have only practiced one trick and 6 sticks of light prison. Is it because Hado and Bakudo who started at number 60 are all high-level Kido? Lan Yan was taken aback for a moment, and then realized it immediately. For his Kido, Hado and Bakudo below the size of 60 are not difficult to practice. He has just read the first part of the Kido Encyclopedia, and on the other hand, his Kido has already fully practiced Hado and Bakudo from numbers 1 to 60, over and over again. In a short while, even the singing version of abandoning is also practiced. But when it was Hado and Bakudo's turn to start on the 60th, the speed of cultivation slowed down. Calculated according to the speed of practicing the 6-stick light prison, it would take at least 10.5 months for my own Kido to practice all the Hado and Bakudo from numbers 1 to 99 without sleep. As for abandoning the singing version, it is estimated that it will take another half a month. After all, abandoning the singing version of Kido, if you want to practice, and the power is not as bad as the singing version of Kido, it not only depends on Kido's own attainments but also depends on the strength of Reiatsu. Snapped. When Lan Yan was thinking about how to speed up his Kido and Reiatsu, a sound of footsteps came to his ears, interrupting his thinking. Any advice? Student Kuchiki. Lan Yan suppressed his thoughts, leaned against the tree, raised his head slightly, and looked lazily at Byakuya Kuchiki who was walking towards him. Have you finished training? Byakuya Kuchiki glanced at Kido Encyclopedia Part 2, which was placed on the grass by Lan Yan, with a complicated expression on his face. Instead of answering, he asked a question. Of course not, I just practiced a trick. It seems that I underestimated the difficulty of Kido starting from 60th. But yes, after all, it is a high-level Kido, so naturally it is not as easy as a Kido below 60. Lan Yan shook his head, and said a little self-deprecatingly. However, his self-mockery fell into Byakuya Kuchiki's ears like a bolt from the blue. Learned again. All that is recorded in the second part of the Kido Encyclopedia is the high-level Hado and Bakudo. How can it be possible to practice after watching it once? Shihuin Yoruichi, Komamura Sajin and others who also listened to Lan Yan's self-deprecating words all changed their expressions in horror. Sloppy, and underestimated him. If what Lan Yan said is true, he will be able to graduate from Spiritual Arts Academy early in 3 months instead of half a year. Teacher Yuan Lujai, if you don't take action and continue to think about it, then it is estimated that soon even you will have nothing to teach. Jashiro Yukitaki was again blown away by Lan Yan's talent. He felt that the number of times Lan Yan gave him surprises in these 2 days was more than the sum of the past hundreds of years. Is there anything else? Lan Yan glanced at Byakuya Kuchiki, who neither left nor spoke, stood in front of him. I have to admit that I'm not as good as you in Kido's field. However, the majesty of the Kuchiki family cannot be violated. I will return sooner or later. At that time, use Zanpakudo to return all the shame you bestowed on me. Until then, Lan Yan Sosuke, you'd better not slack off. Byakuya Kuchiki suppressed the astonishment on his face, took a slight breath, and his eyes were full of unquestionable determination. Finished. He turned and walked away without looking back. Although he still couldn't let go of that tone, but as the young patriarch of the Kuchiki family, he would not be able to continue pestering him after being let go after a tragic defeat. There is still such a measure. It seems that there are unexpected gains. If after this battle, if Kuchiki can really get rid of his habit of getting angry easily, he will not be far from the day when he succeeds to the patriarch. Seeing that the conflict between the two did not continue to escalate, Jashiro Yukitaki, who was ready to intervene, couldn't help but feel a little happy. As the young patriarch of the Kuchiki family, he knows better than anyone else that Byakuya Kuchiki is too smooth, but he doesn't have the qualifications to stand at the apex of Shinigami. One defeat in the first game, and not discouraged, on the contrary, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. As the school bell rang, Lan Yan and Aizen, who had finished their culture classes, walked side by side, walking towards the dormitory like a leisurely stroll. As first-class students, both of them have independent dormitories, and they are next to each other. Along the way, except for the Spiritual Arts Academy students who passed by and cast awe-inspiring gazes at them from a distance, no one approached rashly. This also allows the two to talk without too many scruples. Brother, have you noticed? Byakuya Kuchiki's reaction was a bit over the top during Kido in the morning. Rather than being offended by your words, it's better to use this as an excuse to attack you, and it's the kind that can't wait. Aizen's eyes sparkled slightly. You and I have already walked into Kuchiki's house. No, it should be from the perspective of the four nobles. This time is a temptation, the next time is a strong attack. It seems that there is something in us that attracts them, but they are not sure. Is it a talent? No, if it is just to determine our size, we only need to observe quietly, there is no need to do anything extra. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, obviously speaking chilling words, but the smile on his face made people feel like a spring breeze. As expected of you, the King of Kings. Lan Yan listened quietly, but secretly admired him. During the Kido class, Byakuya Kuchiki's tentative move that he thought he had concealed well fell into Aizen's eyes, but he dissected it thoroughly and saw it cleanly, as if his heart and brain had been dissected. He didn't doubt at all that Aizen guessed more than Byakuya Kuchiki himself knew. Chapter 11. If there is something that can attract the attention of the four great nobles, apart from Zanpakuto's ability in us, that is talent. But these two things cannot be taken away. Then, it is the talent that we display that they mistake for a substance, or the result of it, that, unlike talent and Zanpakuto, can be taken from us. As Aizen said, he raised his right hand, and slightly gathered his 5 fingers, making a virtual grip. This simple and ordinary move fell into Lan Yan's eyes, but it gave him a feeling of holding the 4 nobles in his hands. Shard of the Spirit King. Lan Yan pondered for a moment when he heard this, and 4 words popped out of his mind. Regarding the IQ of his younger brother Wang, he didn't have the slightest doubt at all. After all, cheating can give him the talent and strength to crush Aizen, but it cannot give him the scheming and strategy to crush Aizen. Now that you say that, it is absolutely close to the truth. According to Aizen's analysis, the first thing he thought of was the fragments of the Spirit King scattered in the 3 worlds after being dismembered. Brother, did you think of something? Seeing that Lan Yan was silent and seemed to be thinking, Aizen suddenly became interested. It's nothing, it's just that while listening to you just now, while walking, I practiced another move, Hado. Lan Yan met King Bai's gaze and said seriously, tell the truth, don't lie. Just when Aizen was talking, showing off his IQ, and thoroughly analyzing the black hands behind the scenes, the Kido, Reiatsu, and swordsmen around him couldn't sit still and danced one after another. Your Kido said, it's nothing to worry about because it's just a small night. 2 seconds ago, he had practiced Hado's 63 fiery lightning howl. Your way of the sword says, whoever dares to offend you, cut him with 1 sword, and use the way of sword he just comprehended, 2 breaks, to smash the obstacles in front of him. Your Reiatsu didn't agree with each other, and he was desperate, and his spiritual power increased by leaps and bounds, reaching 8.5 cars. Except that the cat was quietly practicing Bankai in an unknown corner, and Zanpakuto, who surprised everyone, did not respond temporarily. After listening to Aizen's analysis, Kido, Kendo, and Reiatsu all jumped out to show off their muscles. Quote. The smile on Aizen's face faded away, and then walked forward without saying a word. You agreed to show off your IQ together, but you show off your muscles instead. I wanted to pretend to be a wave, but Lan Yan caught the opportunity and made a wave in Versailles. 3 days. No, he made up his mind that he would practice the complete Shikai tonight. Although wisdom and strategy are also part of strength, he doesn't want to have a day when he can only advise Lan Yan and act as a think tank. The other side. After Byakuya Kuchiki left the gate of Spiritual Arts Academy, he returned to Kuchiki's house under the escort of several Kuchiki's dead men lurking in the dark. Grandfather, following your instructions, I found an excuse and had a duel with Lan Yan Sosuke. It is Byakuya who is incompetent and has lost face to the Kuchiki family. Seeing her grandfather, Kuchiki Yinling, who is also the contemporary patriarch of the Kuchiki family, was already waiting in the courtyard. Byakuya Kuchiki stepped forward quickly, first saluted respectfully, and then said that she will be at the Spiritual Arts Academy today with Aizen. The process of fighting is explained in detail. Reiatsu with a cut above the usual Shinigami captain. In a very short period of time, learn all Kido below number 60. This is not something that ordinary geniuses can do. Kuchiki Yinling listened quietly, the solemn look in his eyes flashed from time to time. It could be seen that he, the Kuchiki patriarch, was not at peace in his heart. It's okay, Byakuya. If you compare Shinigami training to a long runway, then Lan Yan is indeed sprinting and has passed you, but this runway is very long, and the endpoint is not 100 meters or 1,000 meters, but 1,000 years. It may take thousands of years to complete the race. You can run without stopping, without obstacles, without rest, without temper, until you reach the finish line, and others may not. After pondering for a while, Kuchiki Yinling couldn't help smiling and comforting her grandson when she saw that her grandson's face was a bit unsightly, obviously still brooding over today's defeat. What is a Kuchiki home? Even if the leader of the four great nobles has declined, his background is still unfathomable. If there is such a need, he can completely allow Byakuya Kuchiki to reach the height of Captain Shinigami in a very short period of time, but it is not conducive to future development. Zongquan Zugi and Reiatsu both have limits. This is a wall. No matter how talented you are, you can't get over it. In the first half, let him take the lead. In the second half, you will have full stamina. Kuchiki Yinling said with a smile. I will not disappoint my grandfather's expectations. Byakuya Kuchiki heard the words, adjusted his mentality, and his face calmed down. You never let grandpa down. Go ahead, practice Bankai. Reiatsu's gap can be made up immediately, and even surpassed. When the time comes, you will use your own knife to wash away the shame of today's defeat. Kuchiki Yinling nodded in relief, and then asked Byakuya Kuchiki to go to the backyard to practice Bankai. Yes, for the Shinigami from Rukongai, practicing Bankai depends on talent and chance, but for the Kuchiki family, the head of the four nobles, although there is no such thing as the god-turning body invented by Urahara Kazuki in the future, they also have their own set of cultivation Bankai's method and the matching secret treasure. Yes, a trace of fighting spirit flashed in Byakuya Kuchiki's eyes. He has never tried to surpass a person so much as he is now. Even if Shihuin Yoruichi used to tease him for a long time, he used to practice Shunpo with all his strength to overtake the opponent, but it was not as strong as it is now. Did you hear what Byakuya said just now? After watching Byakuya Kuchiki leave, Kuchiki Yinling picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip of the tea. After a while, he spoke slowly into the air. Of course, I heard it very clearly. If it was just doubts before, it can be said that it is certain now. Such aptitude is beyond the category of geniuses. Lan Yan and his younger brother named Aizen should be the lucky ones in this world. They got the fragment of the Spirit King and can use the power contained in it. The air moved slightly. Then, a man dressed in ghost costumes, with dark green hair, and slanted eyes revealing a coldness came out. It's not someone else. He is the patriarch of the Tsunayashiro family, one of the four noble families. Tsunayashiro Tokunada. Gotei 13 takes them seriously. Civilian background, clean background. This is the talent that the captain likes to cultivate the most. In other words, their brothers have already entered the field of vision of the captain. Kuchiki Yinling had a panoramic view of the coldness on Tsunayashiro Tokunada's face. A dead genius is not a genius. They can only be seen by Yamamoto Genryusai if they are alive, and they will disappear when they are dead. Like the captain of first-generation Gotei 13, don't you think? Chief Kuchiki. When Tsunayashiro Tokunada heard Yamamoto Genryusai's name, his eyes showed no fear. Obviously, even Shinigami, who claims to be the strongest in the millennium, still can't stop him from doing whatever he wants. After all, even the captain is under the jurisdiction of the 46 room. But what about room 46? What is it? It is an institution composed of nobles and elders. In the Soul Society, is there any nobleman bigger than Tsunayashiro? No. Also add another Kuchiki. If it's really a fragment of the Spirit King, do you know what to do? Kuchiki Yinling did not respond on the topic of Gotei 13's first-generation captain. Of course, the four nobles are united in spirit, and I will give you half of what I have. For so many years, we have cooperated to hunt Shinigami who is carrying the fragment of the Spirit King not once or twice. Don't you still feel worried about me? Even if the news is leaked, I will bear the infamy. You are still high above the head of the Kuchiki clan, who is known as a model of the Shinigami nobles. There will be no stain on you. Tsunayashiro Tokunada narrowed his eyes slightly, and the amount of information revealed in his words made people shudder. The two stopped talking, but met their eyes. After looking at each other for a while, he slowly disappeared into the air just like when he came. It's a pity, the old man's daughter has already been promised to Shang. The old man has already asked for Shang. If he keeps you, Shitan will have a problem. I can only blame you for being born at the wrong time, Lan Yan. Otherwise, if you can marry into my Kuchiki's family, even if I do my best, I will protect you as the second Yamamoto Genryusai, and Aizen too. Kuchiki Yinling murmured. The voice was as thin as dust. Coincidentally, at the same time, Yamamoto Genryusai and Jashiro Yukitaki were also chatting about the Lanyan brothers in the office of the captain of the first team. Without relying on sealed state, create Zanpakudo. In an instant, comprehend Shikai. In less than 10 minutes, I have learned all the Kido below the size of 60, and even practiced a lot of Kido below the size of 60. After Yamamoto Genryusai learned of Lanyan's performance today, even if he has seen all the vicissitudes of life, his unshakable heart like a rock is still fluctuating. According to what you said, Lanyan is probably much better than Chun Shui. In his words, there was a hint of appreciation. Let's not talk about Lanyan, even Aizen is not inferior to Jingle, even worse. It's just that my brother's light is completely covered by my brother. Teacher Yuan Lujai, please forgive me for being rude. If you really want to accept disciples, I suggest that you should leave. Based on my observations of Lanyan today, he only needs 3 months at most to learn Quan Zan Quan. Ghost, early graduation from Spiritual Arts Academy. Jashiro Yukitaki reminded. So fast. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's slightly squinted eyes opened suddenly, with a flash of surprise. Maybe, only faster. Jashiro Yukitaki nodded. That's all. The old man will go there himself. Yamamoto Genryusai pondered for a moment, then stood up from the chair under Jashiro Yukitaki's surprised expression. Originally, he was moved to accept disciples. After Jashiro Yukitaki said this, it suddenly became stronger. Simply don't wait any longer, and leave immediately. After all, he understands what Jashiro Yukitaki means, and if he doesn't accept it, he won't have to accept it in a few months. Brother Lanyan has basically learned everything he can learn. Even if he wants to teach, there is nothing to teach. Teacher Yuan Lujai, do you want to go there in person? It's better to let me go and bring them to see you. Jashiro Yukitaki hurried forward. No need. This old man's bones are not so old that they need to be supported even for a few steps. What's more, the old man also wants to see with his own eyes, they are brothers. Yamamoto Motoyanagi, leaning on a crutch made by Ryujin Jaka, walked out of the office step by step. Seeing this, Jashiro Yukitaki also saw that his teacher really had a strong love for the Lanyan brothers. Only then will he go to the Spiritual Arts Academy in person as the captain. Even at the beginning, he and Kyoraku Shunsui were summoned to rule, and were brought in front of Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni by the Shinigami of the first team. Unlike now, I can't wait to leave. As if afraid, one step too late, the disciple who is about to get his hands will put on his wings and fly away by himself. At the same time, just as the two Shinigami captains, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and Jashiro Yukitaki, were walking towards Spiritual Arts Academy, Lanyan and Aizen also returned to their respective dormitories. As first-class students, the dormitory for the two of them is more like a suite than a dormitory. Click. Lanyan put his hand on the handle, twisted it lightly, and the door opened with a sound. However, just when he was about to lift his feet, his eyes narrowed suddenly, and Reiatsu Sense instantly felt a wave of Reiatsu suddenly appearing from his room. Before the door was unscrewed, nothing was sensed. But when the door opened, Reiatsu appeared immediately. Kido enchantment. A thought flashed in Lanyan's mind. After being exposed to Kido cultivation, he knew that this was the Kido enchantment. It looks the same as usual on the outside, but in fact, his dormitory has already been covered with a barrier, waiting for him to step in. At the same time, people in the dormitory also noticed Lanyan's return. Before he could take any action, strange streams of light rose up, and the surrounding space seemed to become a bit blurred, like watching a lantern on a horse. In a blink of an eye, everything returned to calm. What Lanyan could see was no longer the familiar dormitory, but a gloomy, bleak empty place. And 10 figures from head to toe, all hidden under black robes, with only a handful of Zanpakudo exposed in the air. Kido Forbidden Technique. Spatial Transfer. Big Kido. Seeing this scene, Lanyan's face remained unchanged, but his eyes flickered slightly. The time he traveled to the Shinigami world is not bad, and he has never had any grudges with the Big Kido in his memory. Thinking of this, on the way back, Aizen's analysis immediately came to mind. 4 nobles. Lan Yan's eyes turned cold. Can infiltrate the dormitory of the first-class students of Spiritual Arts Academy. A forbidden technique that can lay down a Keto barrier and perform space transfer. All of these are not ordinary Shinigami, not even ordinary nobles can do it. The 61 6-stick light prison of Bakudo. 62 of Bakudo 100 steps Longan. 63 of Bakudo. Locking with a lock. 75 5 pillars of Bakudo. Bakudo 79 9 Yao Tai. With the completion of the space transfer, 5 black-robed figures shot at the same time, and 5 high-level Bakudo who gave up singing were cast together. In an instant, the golden light sheets, multiple light sticks, serpent-like chains, huge iron pillars, and 9 black light balls bound Lan Yan's limbs, imprisoned his whole body, and sealed him to the ground. Limbs and limbs, even the fingers and toes can't move, and even the mouth can't be opened to make the slightest sound. The tacit and excellent cooperation, as well as the combination of various Bakudo, all told Lan Yan that the other party did a lot of such attacks. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have such a skillful offensive. Spiritual Arts Academy's strongest genius since 2000. That's all. Even the first round of Bakudo couldn't hold up. I thought how amazing it was. Seeing that Lan Yan was imprisoned by many Bakudo until he couldn't move, several figures in black robes immediately laughed. His talent is beyond doubt, but the training time is too short. In the end, he just practiced in the Spiritual Arts Academy for a day. In the face of the siege carefully prepared by 10 of us, do you still expect a Shinigami rookie who just got Zanpakudo to turn the world upside down? The tone of one person standing among the many black-robed figures was not surprising. He is obviously the leader of these people, and no one refuted when he said it. Captain, do you want to take him back directly? One of the figures in black robe asked. No, cut off his limbs first. Otherwise, it will be bad if you bump into an adult. The captain at the head shook his head, and then ordered someone to step forward and cut off the limbs of Lan Yan, who was restrained by many Bakudo. Yes, as soon as the 2 heard this, they immediately stepped forward and pulled out the Zanpakudo. The Bakudo they cast is not a random fight. There is a little gap between the Bakudo and the Bakudo just at the junction of the limbs and the body. Apparently it was done for the purpose of amputating limbs. Puff, lingering under the bleak moonlight, Zanpakudo bloomed with a cold knife light. With the sound of the sword piercing into the flesh, Lan Yan's limbs had been cut off and separated from his limbs. Captain, it has been cut off. One took Zanpakudo back and reported back. The leader nodded slightly, but when he inadvertently glanced at Lan Yan's severed limb from the corner of his eye, he found that what flowed from the wound was not blood, but golden light. Wrong. Flash. Seeing this, his pupils constricted, and a trace of horror appeared on his face under the black robe. Call out. Just when the few people pulled back and flew back, the whole body of Lan Yan, who was imprisoned by Bakudo, had turned into golden light spots, flashing out from the many Bakudo, and then transformed into a golden light and turned back into a human body. Enchantment. Bakudo, I only ask once, who is the adult you just mentioned? Lan Yan walked out of Bakudo, looking at the 10 people in front of him indifferently. You don't deserve to know his name. The leader said coldly, then raised his right hand. Killed. Say it. With a wave of his hand. Some of the 9 subordinates around him pulled out Zanpakudo and shouted the liberation language, some cast Bakudo and gave up the chant, and some cast Hado and began to chant. However, whether it's drawing the sword or singing, before their movements start, Lan Yan's whole body has already burst into dazzling golden light, like a brilliant sun shining all over the earth. Instantly overshadowed Haoyu hanging above the black curtain. Ah, my eyes. Can't see anything. The sudden strong light made the eyes of many black-robed figures who wanted to attack again feel stinging, and the picture in their sight was directly taken away. The light was taken away, leaving only a vast expanse of whiteness. The sudden change directly interrupted their Zanpakudo liberation, as well as Kito's chanting and release. The way of the sword pressure. In the wave of golden light that shone across the sky, Lan Yan drew his saber with one hand and swept across. Bang! Rolling Reiatsu boiled and roared, as if a long-sleeping ferocious beast awakened, swept out with the blade, and immediately turned into a golden sword pressure that burned all the spirits in the air along the road, counting all the black-robed figures whose vision was taken away submerged. Puff! The sword is pressed against the body. Blood poured out. The head flew across. With just one simple move of drawing the knife, 9 human heads moved from the necks of these black-robed figures. Only the leader, although his vision was temporarily robbed by the strong light, was not disturbed, and before the sword pressure came, Shunpo retreated, avoiding the surging sword pressure that could sweep 1,000 troops away. I underestimated you. You won't have the opportunity like just now. The black-robed leader retreated and stood firm for a moment, grasping the handle of the knife with his right hand, and pulled out Zanpakuto with lightning speed, while shouting the liberation language. Howl, Gale. As the blue light flashed, the Zanpakuto in his palm had already turned into a blue sword. He didn't see any movement. The air in a radius of tens of meters seemed to run wild, turning into 9 huge storm turbulence, like the tails of 9 tails foxes. As they danced gently, the ground broke and dust flew up. It's time to draw the curtain down. Lan Yan Sosuke. If you keep the master waiting for too long, even if you cut off your limbs and send them to him, you won't be happy. The black-robed leader's gaze was like a knife, and he gave Lan Yan a cold look. As if responding to the opponent's sword pressure just now, he held the blast behind Shikai with both hands, and pointed the blade straight at the sky. Hold head high. The wind howled and raged in all directions, like the roar of Manos Grande, which made people's hair stand on end. Is it the 4 nobles? Lan Yan suddenly said something. As soon as these words came out, the movements of the black-robed leader suddenly froze. It seems that it is right. Seeing this, Lan Yan raised his mouth slightly. Die. The black-robed leader's face turned cold, and murderous intent surged in his heart. Knowing that his reaction just now had been exposed, he immediately extinguished the idea of capturing him alive, and then he held up the blue sword condescendingly and slashed straight down. 9 storms and turbulent currents, like silver snakes dancing wildly, surrounded Lan Yan from all directions, surrounded by sharp edges that tore the ground, and then swept down together. You have investigated me, so you should be very clear about it. Have you forgotten? I'll be Shikai too. Facing the storm and turbulence that engulfed the whale like 9 shocking pythons, Lan Yan stood calmly, neither attacking nor defending, but put the Zanpakuto in his hand back into the scabbard. Open your eyes, Zuin. The voice fell. The pillar of light that reaches the sky rises from the ground. Like a ladder to the sky, connecting the land of the Soul Society with the bright moon, countless golden lights rush straight into the night, filling the bright moon that exudes silvery moonlight with gold, like a round of brilliant sun, hanging high in the sky, dispelling endless of darkness. At the same time, it also completely dispelled the storm and turbulence that was raging around, and scattered it until it was wiped out. Is this really Zanpakuto's Shikai? The black-robed leader's eyes had gradually regained his vision, and he couldn't help being horrified when he saw the color change of Haoyu and Yemu. Zanpakuto liberated. Whether it is Shikai or Bankai, he has seen a lot. But I have never seen any release of Zanpakuto with such a huge momentum. Not to mention Shikai, even Bankai, there is no Zanpakuto in his memory that can compare. Sorry, it's the first time I use Shikai, I'm a little uncomfortable. Sorry for the waiting. As compensation, I'll let you experience Zanpakuto, the strongest flash system that even Byakuya Kuchiki has never seen. The sound has not yet spread. Lan Yan's whole body has been photonized, turning into little photons that spread out, and then formed a golden streamer, which broke through the air. The speed is faster than that of a shooting star. Boom! The black-robed leader not only uses his eyes, but also his Reiatsu perception to lock on to Lan Yan at all times. But it didn't work. He didn't have time to react and didn't even know what happened. It was only in time to see the corner of Lan Yan's mouth move slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came, and then everything in his vision disappeared, covered by the scorching golden light. He only had time to hear the sound of ribs breaking, and he didn't even feel the pain. The black robe covering his body was blown into powder, and then his feet left the ground, and his body flew into the air, like a cannonball fired, accompanied by the majestic air spreading from both sides. Waves, flying upside down to 100 meters away. Bang bang bang. There were several loud noises in succession, and the boulders, giant trees, and the ground were all shattered and cracked. It smashed several towering ancient trees, shattered huge boulders, and finally fell to the ground like rags, leaving spider webs of cracks on the surface. Puff. After regaining consciousness, the black-robed leader only felt pain like a torrential river, flowing from his chest to all his limbs, and even spewed out a mouthful of blood mist uncontrollably from his mouth, staining the dead bully costume exposed to the air. Blood red. What did I go through just now? He collapsed to the ground, and his face, which was also stained red with blood, was filled with disbelief at this moment. After panting for a few breaths and barely regaining some strength, he raised his neck with all his strength and raised his head from the ground. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught the broken ribs and vaguely saw a bloody footprint. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? At this time, a voice came from Shanshan. Yes. Haipao. No, it should be said that the leader of this group of people has awakened. With this belated voice, he knew how he lost. At the same time, he also figured out that before the defeat, Lan Yan's mouth moved slightly, clearly speaking, but he didn't hear any sound. Just because the speed of light is completely above the speed of sound. So, after a flash boost, I heard a voice that matched Lan Yan's mouth. Suddenly, the leader felt his vision dim, and when he saw clearly, what he saw was the sole of a shoe facing his face. Now can you tell me your master's name? Lan Yan raised his foot and hung in the air, aiming at the only surviving survivor in front of him. Even if it is known, what's the use? That is the existence that stands at the pinnacle of the soul society and sets the rules. You can't do anything except wait for the despair to come in fear, cursing your own powerlessness frantically before death comes. Even if you really hold the strongest Zanpakuto of the flash system, you can't change it. The leader coughed up blood and asked intermittently. Boom. What answered him was a footprint surrounded by golden light. With one foot stepping down, the earth shook and cracked, and the cracks stretched in all directions like pythons coming out of their holes. Immediately afterwards, bursts of bright golden light, like a volcanic eruption, filled the cracks and at the same time, gushed out like magma, enveloping a huge dust column, soaring into the sky. Wrong answer. Lan Yan withdrew his right foot, no longer looked at the headless corpse that twitched slightly under that foot, and then no longer lived. Shiba, Shihuan, Kuchiki, and Tsunayashiro. Lan Yan looked pensive. In his memory, Tsunayashiro was the only four nobles who were eyeing the fragments of the Soul King. Even marrying a Rukongai woman is for the fact that the other party has a fragment of the Spirit King in his body, which is convenient for experimentation. By the way, Aizen. At this time, Lan Yan thought of forcing the king's younger brother. Since he was attacked, Aizen, who didn't choose to hide himself like Yuan Shikong, should have been targeted. Thinking of this, he squatted down and lightly touched the ground with one finger. The 58th of Bakudo. Slap your toe and chase a sparrow. The golden light rises between the fingers, and Lan Yan's Reiatsu perception is fully opened, and the perception range is 10 times or more than 100 times that of the usual one. Soon, an extremely familiar Reiatsu appeared in his Reiatsu perception range. Call out. After locking onto Aizen's Reiatsu, he didn't see any movement. He had disappeared from the spot, and he could only vaguely see a ray of light moving wantonly under the night. Just 10 seconds. However, it moved and turned several times. Lan Yan then crossed more than 50 kilometers and stopped at a high place in a clearing. Looking down, he saw swords and shadows beside the mountain stream, with murderous intent rushing. Upon closer inspection, it was apparent that Aizen was being besieged by 6 paths black-robed figures, and not far away were 4 corpses lying in a pool of blood. Obviously, King Bai enjoyed the same treatment as him. A group of 10 people, one is not less than one. Puff. In just a few seconds, there was a rapid sound of sharp blades piercing through the body. Holding Zanpakuto in his hand, Aizen disemboweled the black-robed figure in front of him while raising his left hand. Hado's 33. Kango pendant. Just as the 2 figures in black robes were about to point their knives at his back and spine, they were forced back by the blue explosive flames that shot out like tree branches. I can tell, even if he hasn't mastered the complete Shikai yet, with the help of Kido, who has been practicing for less than a day, and the self-taught Kendo, he still kills 7 in and 7 out of the crowd. Swords and swords cannot be added to the body. Hado Bakudo is hard to beat. The opponent's defeat is just a matter of time. Lan Yan watched for a while, and couldn't help but yawned. If it's Zanpakuto, Reiatsu, and Zangquan Zugi who reach the apex of Shinigami, he will definitely enjoy watching it. After all, forcing the king to make a move, every frame is a famous scene. But the current Aizen, apart from being able to wipe out the opponent completely, doesn't even have the chance to talk flirtatiously, so where is the chance to pretend to be aggressive? Shake it, ah. Just as the leading black-robed figure uttered the liberation language and was about to use Shikai, a golden laser pierced through the air and shot in from the back of the heart and out from the front of the chest. How so? He looked down at the bloody hole in his chest, pain and astonishment written all over his face. When Zanpakuto's real name came to his lips, it stopped abruptly and could no longer be called out. Zanpakuto, who was clutched in his hand, came out and could no longer be held. Bang! Before Zanpakuto landed, the laser light that pierced Zanpakuto's heart and body hit the ground, and then exploded with a thunderous bang, turning into a fiery golden ball of light, expanding and spreading in all directions. Surrounded by the mighty Reiatsu, the impact engulfed the remaining black-robed figures. Ah! The bleak scream had just rang out before it was completely covered up by the violent explosion. Just like the fate of the owners of these voices. 39 of Bakuto. The round gate fan. With a flick of his fingers, Aizen created a prototype protective shield, which barely blocked the aftermath of the explosion, and then turned his head to look in the direction of the golden laser. Before, even though he was surrounded by heavy siege, Reiatsu Sense has been paying attention to everything around him. As early as when Lan Yan's Reiatsu appeared nearby, he had already sensed it, but after seeing his brother eating melons, he ignored it and continued dancing. Unexpectedly, after a while, a laser beam suddenly struck, directly bringing the doomed battle to an end. It's just an opponent of this Reiatsu level, does it cost you so much time? Aizen. Lan Yan met the gaze that forced Wang Chao to look over. As he spoke, he retracted his index finger that was stretched in midair. They made a nice gift for me. In return, I can only let them see the world as much as possible. This is already the best return gift I can think of. Aizen smiled lightly. Even in the face of his own brother, he still can't lose his compulsion. Oh, you know the name of Zanpakuto. Lan Yan's heart moved when he heard this, and his eyes could not help but move down to the Zanpakuto in the opponent's hand. Kyoka Suigetsu. The ability is complete hypnosis, and it only needs to be seen once to permanently dominate the opponent's 5 senses. Oh, by the way, he's still the strongest Zanpakuto in the illusion department. Aizen holds Kyoka Suigetsu with the point pointing straight at the ground. The rhythmic voice that makes people involuntarily immerse themselves in it faintly reveals a bit of showing off. Perhaps only in front of Lan Yan, he will show such a side. Kyoka Suigetsu. Seeing that Aizen didn't hide anything when facing him, and opened his mouth to reveal Kyoka Suigetsu's abilities, the smile on the corner of Lan Yan's mouth deepened. From the past, plus this move, he could see that in front of other people, the king was still the king, the Aizen Sosuke who was kind and polite on the outside, but cold and ruthless in reality. But in front of him, there is only one identity. Younger brother. And you. When I opened the Reiatsu perception before, I didn't perceive your Reiatsu, but you suddenly appeared in an instant, and there was just a golden light that was faster than lightning. The ability to create and manipulate light for battle, is this your Zanpakuto ability? Seeing that Lan Yan's face was unexpectedly calm when he learned that his Zanpakuto was the strongest hallucination system, he was not surprised at all. Aizen was also a little curious. What is brother's Zanpakuto? As you said, my Zanpakuto is to create and control light to fight, with the speed of light and the power of light. This is Candle Yin. Oh, by the way, he is still the strongest Zanpakuto of the Shining System. Seeing that Aizen was confiding in himself, but at the same time not forgetting to pretend to be aggressive, Lan Yan looked at him with a half-smile. Same tone, same words, put it back on the spot. Quote. When Aizen heard this, the smile on his face froze. Same tone, same words. It just happened that Lan Yan pretended to be there. Obviously my own Kyoka Suigetsu is the strongest Zanpakuto in the hallucination system, but I don't know why, but I just can't be happy. He. The two looked at each other quietly, and suddenly smiled at each other. It is only when facing each other that they will show such a side. Call out. But soon, as the 2 strands of Reiatsu appeared in Reiatsu consciousness, although the smiles on their faces did not disappear, they were even a little more sunny and gentle than before. But it no longer has the purity and sincerity just now. Lan Yan, Aizen, what's the matter with you? It only took a few seconds from when Reiatsu's consciousness appeared to Lan Yan's sight. Jashiro Yukitaki Shunpo approached. After stopping, he looked around and saw all the corpses that were either pierced by sharp blades or killed by Hado. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni did not speak, but leaned on Zanpakuto in the shape of a cane, and stared at brother Lan Yan with eyes as deep as the ocean. It should be an assassination. After class from Spiritual Arts Academy, we returned to the dormitory. The moment we didn't want to open the door to enter, the scene in front of us became blurred, and then Aizen and I were teleported to two different places. As you can see from the back, Mr. Jashiro, Aizen and I killed the attacker on the spot out of self-preservation. Lan Yan spoke a chilling thing in a casual tone. Keto enchantment, forbidden technique space transfer. A well-prepared ambush. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni narrowed his eyes slightly. Through the few words of Lan Yan, he has already created a series of pictures in his mind. It's like being there. By the way, I almost forgot to introduce you. This is the captain of the guard, and also the founder of the Spiritual Arts Academy. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Only then did Jashiro Yukitaki realize that he hadn't introduced his teacher yet. Headmaster. Your Excellency Captain. Lan Yan and Aizen are one in front of the other, but they have completely different names, which made both Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni and Jashiro Yukitaki startled slightly. Especially Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, it was the first time he heard such a title. However, although he has been stationed in Seraiti all year round, he is not ignorant of the outside world, or even the current world. Naturally, it is clear what the principal's title means. Lan Yan is graceful, free and easy. Aizen behaves politely and as a gentleman. This pair of brothers is not bad. Just through a title, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, who has lived for thousands of years, has guessed the characters of Lan Yan and Aizen. Of course, that's just the surface layer. Unfortunately, no one was left alive. Otherwise, if you leave it to Xinjiang or the Keto people, you should be able to torture the person behind it very quickly, but it doesn't matter, you will definitely be able to find out. At that time, Seraiti will give you an explanation. Jashiro Yukitaki crouched in front of a corpse and ripped the black robe off its face, revealing a face he had never seen before. The assassination of an ordinary Spiritual Arts Academy student would not alert the captain, let alone the chief captain. As for giving an explanation in person, it is even more idiot talking in sleep. Soul Society is not a pure land of pure bliss, on the contrary, it is an extremely ignorant, backward, old-fashioned and decadent world. In the final analysis, it was the Lan Yan brothers who were assassinated. The once-in-a-century genius Shinigami. Not only will he be a firm captain in the future, but now he is even more likely to become his fellow apprentice. Mr. Jashiro, who are you and the principal coming this time? Regarding Jashiro Yukitaki's explanation, Lan Yan just smiled noncommittally, and then shifted the topic to the reason for their visit. Confession. This kind of thing is not given by others, but picked up by oneself. The Soul Society has everything, even a fragment of the Soul King falling from the sky, but there is no such good thing. But no matter what the final result is, whether he or Aizen, they will personally find the person behind it to ask for it. Even if the opponent is the Four Nobles. It's not me who came to look for you this time, but teacher Yuan Lujai. Jashiro Yukitaki did not make a claim, revealing the intention of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. When Lan Yan and Aizen heard this, they immediately looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Before that, I want to ask you one thing first. Why did you become Shinigami? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni was as sharp as a knife, as if he could pierce through all disguises, and stared straight into the depths of his heart, staring directly at brother Lan Yan. A view from the summit of Shinigami. Lan Yan said without thinking. Ultimate by Zanpakuto. Reiatsu's qualifications. The ultimate of Zo Fist Zo Gui. He really wants to see how high his own abilities will be cultivated independently in the end. A higher realm. Aizen also expressed his thoughts. Since he didn't choose to take the path of the original time and space, but showed his talent, he didn't need to deliberately hide his front. Yeah, Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni nodded slightly, stopped talking, and his face was neither happy nor angry. Even Jashiro Yukitaki on the side could hardly guess his true thoughts. As he fell silent, the atmosphere around him suddenly became a little depressing. Seeing this, Lan Yan was not in a hurry. At this moment, his attention has been attracted by his noisy abilities. Your Zanpakuto is very satisfied with the fact that you used him to wipe out the enemy in the battle just now. In a good mood, he decided to tell you about the new Shikai ability, Amazono Cloud Sword. Your Kendo is very happy, because when you were fighting, you used the Kendo sword pressure he gave you at the beginning, which makes him feel very face, so he thoughtfully tailor-made a Kendo 100 steps for you flying sword. Your Kido is very upset, because you used Zanpakuto and Kendo respectively in the battle, but he was the only one left behind, but he decided to forgive you once, and he also used the newly trained Bakudo number 63 lock bar lock. The bondage is handed over to you. I just ask you to pretend to be aggressive next time, and don't forget to bring him with you. It's really tailor-made. Lan Yan was overjoyed. The Reiatsu version of Kendo 100-step flying sword, combined with Zanpakuto's ability Amakongan sword, is a perfect match. You can throw it away as you want, you are not afraid of losing it at all, and you don't even have to recall the effort. It's just Kido's reaction that makes him a little dumbfounded. It seems that the next time you fight against someone, you have to give Kido a few highs and lows, otherwise it is really possible to strike. Lan Yan, Aizen, you go back to Spiritual Arts Academy first, and the old man will send someone to investigate the matter later. Also, don't disclose what happened today. At this time, Yamamoto Genryusai suddenly spoke. As soon as these words came out, Jashiro Yukitaki's eyes flickered slightly, but he didn't say anything. I see. Farewell, Your Excellency Captain, and Mr. Jashiro. Lan Yan and Aizen secretly exchanged glances, but they remained calm on the surface, just nodded and turned to leave. Teacher Yuan Lujai, why? Didn't you come here to accept Lan Yan and the others as disciples? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Jashiro Yukitaki watched the Lan Yan brothers leave without saying a word, until his spiritual sense could no longer perceive the Reiatsu of the two of them. He finally couldn't hold back the puzzlement in his heart, and asked Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. A group of 10 people, consisting of a vice captain, plus 9 Shinigami with no less than 3 seats, were sent to assassinate 2 freshmen of the Spiritual Arts Academy who were enrolled for only 1 day. In the end, the entire army was wiped out, and no one survived. Frankly speaking, Jashiro, Brother Lan Yan's talent is even higher than what you describe. Even in the thousands of years that I have lived, I have never seen a genius better than them. Yamamoto Yuan Ryusai heavy national language out amazing. Then Yuan Lujai, why did you let them go back? Jashiro Yukitaki was both amazed by Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni's evaluation of the Lan Yan brothers, and at the same time puzzled. No matter how high the talent is, if it is someone who neglects justice, it will be meaningless. Look again, time will tell the truth. Instead of making them stronger, I want to know if they are people with lofty ideals who stick to justice. If so, it's not too late for me to accept them as disciples. After all, their Shinigami journey has just begun. Yamamoto Motoyanagi said Shigekuni quietly. Facing his most trusted disciple, he did not hide too much, but frankly revealed his thoughts. In the beginning, because of his love for talents, he did have the idea of including Lan Yan and Aizen as his family members, but after seeing the corpses everywhere, he suddenly saw a familiar but incomparably distant figure on the 2 brothers. Leading the powerful from all walks of life, in the name of protecting the court, in the name of being a killer. It was the self known as the Sword Demon, 2,000 years ago, but in the end he was destroyed by himself. The rules and discipline of the Soul Society do not require the existence of a third sword ghost. Rather than single-handedly creating 2 protégés who might become sword demons, he wanted 2 geniuses who were controllable and difficult to pose a threat to the Soul Society. Like the future Zaraki Kenpachi. It seems to teach him the way of the sword, but in fact he wants him to give up the way of the sword and never become a Kenpachi beyond Unohana. Teacher Yuan Lujai, you have changed. Because of their existence, it is possible to confront the rules and discipline of the Soul Society, and change from cultivation to monitoring. But don't forget, they are the victims in this matter. Jashiro Yukitaki murmured as Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's back disappeared from his sight. Although he was not as smart as Kiraku Shunsui, he also sensed that there was an unusual aura behind the assassination of the Lan Yan brothers. Coupled with Yamamoto Motonyanagi Shigekuni's concerns, various reasons finally prompted his teacher to change his original intention. Compared with the past, a little less kind and confident, a little more mean and old-fashioned. It's like Central 46. In order to prevent all kinds of harm, even if it is only a possibility, all kinds of incredible rules are formulated. For example, the Soul Society does not allow the existence of two identical Zanpakuto. Similarly, Yamamoto Genyanagi Shigekuni also held this idea. Aizen, as you said before, some of the four nobles are after us. On the way back, Lan Yan told the story of how he tested the leader of the Black Robe before he wiped out the Shinigami who attacked him. Brother, what do you think the captain and Mr. Jashiro came to see us for? When Aizen heard this, there was no surprise on his face, as if he had already expected it. Indeed, they never revealed their true intentions from the beginning to the end. Lan Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't think that the attack on himself and Aizen's two freshmen would alert Yamamoto Yuanryusai Shigekuni and go out in person. Obviously, the two came after themselves and others, not because they sensed that they were being attacked and came to rescue them in a hurry, but because they had other purposes from the beginning, which just happened to happen. It seems that after tonight, besides the four nobles, there will be one more person targeting us. Aizen said with a smile. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Lan Yan spat out a name, his tone full of affirmation. His original intention should be to love talents, just like he brought Jingle and Jashiro into the door hundreds of years ago, but it changed later. I went to the library of Spiritual Arts Academy today, and there happened to be a book about Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni, which recorded many deeds in the 2000 years since he founded Spiritual Arts Academy. Let's not talk about 2000 years ago, but now, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni is a Shinigami who is bound by rules, and he is still bound by the rules made by himself, just like the Zanpakuto in his hand, blocked by his scabbard. Unless someone tries to challenge this rule, it can only be a crutch. Aizen's face was calm, and he didn't show the slightest fear because he was being targeted by the strongest Shinigami in the millennium like Yamamoto Yuanryusai Shigekuni. Not even worry. In other words, Yamamoto was worried that you and I would become challenges and even destroy the existence of the rules he established, so it was inevitable that this kind of thing would happen. To prevent us from growing too fast and threatening the laws of the Soul Society, he changed the idea as to let you and me develop freely while closely watching or monitoring is more appropriate. This is not in line with the confidence that the strongest Shinigami in the millennium should have. The strong should make the rules, but override the rules. Aizen talked and laughed, showing the demeanor of wisdom in his hands. It doesn't matter. With or without Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, it will not change the fact that you and I are destined to be at the top. This is not a theory of volition. It will not change in any way because of Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni's decision and thoughts. The reason why the facts are facts is that they will not be changed by anyone's will, even if the opponent is the strongest Shinigami in the millennium. Lan Yan smiled, revealing an undeniable haki in his words. It is a great honor and blessing for any Shinigami in the Soul Society to become a disciple of Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni. But in his opinion, it wasn't even half attractive. After all, I only need to learn a little bit of ability, even if it is a little superficial. This ability will be self-cultivated, without him worrying about it, and without others teaching it. Just like at the beginning of time travel, with just a few swipes of the sword, the way of the sword can be cultivated by itself. The same is true today. After reading the book Kido Encyclopedia, I didn't even learn Bakudo and Hado, but Kido has become his ability and he is practicing on his own. It was only a matter of time before reaching the top of Shinigami. As for Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni eyeing him, Lan Yan didn't even care. His abilities are not for display. Zanpakuto, Kido, and Kendo are both strong and defensive. If Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni dares to make a move, they will definitely rush to explode, breaking through one by one, just like Kurosaki Ichigo, crazily opening up. Not to mention, he was accompanied by a younger brother who forced the king. It's natural. After hearing this, Aizen nodded happily. He doesn't need a teacher, because just by self-study, he has the confidence to stand at the top of the Shinigami. Even without getting into Spiritual Arts Academy. The difference is only the length of time. Entering the Spiritual Arts Academy is nothing more than shortening the time and speeding up the future process. It's actually pretty good as it is now. With the strongest Shinigami in the millennium watching closely, it is very convenient for us to do everything. Isn't it? Lan Yan glanced at the Zanpakuto on King Bai's waist. It's really good. Aizen follows Lan Yan's line of sight and freezes on Kyoka Suigetsu. He was startled for a moment, and then smiled knowingly. That's the captain of the guard. Who would question his eyes and his confession? Tsunayashiro residence. Waste. I handed over the 2 hunting god teams to you. How about you? That's how you repay me. It's okay to wipe out the whole army. Brothers Lan Yan and Aizen, you didn't bring me back any of them. A black-robed figure crossed the threshold, flew upside down, and hit the stone pillar at the gate. His head was bleeding, but he kept rolling and crawling back into the hall, crawling at the feet of Tsunayashiro Tokunada, who was sitting in the main seat. Master Tokunada, forgive me. Although Brother Lan Yan has only been enrolled in Spiritual Arts Academy for 1 day, Reiatsu is already comparable to the captain of Shinigami, and has mastered Shikai, and his combat ability is very good. In order to deal with them, I even formulated a set of careful assassination plans. The vice-captain level Shinigami can only be defeated in an instant. Even the captain level Shinigami will inevitably be injured if they are caught off guard. The only explanation is that they have surpassed the category of the vice-captain. The black-robed figure knelt on the ground, tremblingly begging for mercy. Hado's 54th waist flame. Tsunayashiro Tokunada's eyes turned cold. He didn't want to listen to his explanation at all, and hit his face with a disc-shaped purple flame with his backhand. Chi. The black-robed figure didn't even have a chance to scream. His head was blown off in an instant, and then burned to the ground. Master Shiden, do you need me to go? I have already found the remnants of the killer group that you asked me to find. It's just a good time to use the Lan Yan brothers to try their knives and see if they are good or bad. At this time, a figure dressed in white, trimmed with gold rims symbolizing nobility, and wearing a white cap came out of the darkness. Not someone else. It is the general representative of Junyang Xiaoyuan. Yamada Shinosuke. No need. Mr. Genryuzai and Jashiro Yukitaki have already intervened. If they do something else, it will be easy for them to find me. I don't want to be imprisoned for hundreds of years. Tsunayashiro Tokunada was a little moved, but thought that Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni and Jashiro Yukitaki already knew about this and were still pursuing it secretly, so he could only temporarily suppress this idea. What about Brother Lan Yan? I couldn't be sure before, but judging from their record of completely annihilating the 2 hunting god teams, they do have the Spirit King fragments in their bodies, as you guessed, Mr. Shiden, and this size is not small at all. Only in this way can they explain why they can obtain such an unreasonable improvement speed after only 1 day of contact with Zanpakuto and Kido. Yamada Shinosuke nodded, no longer insisting. There will be opportunities in the future. Anyway, the fragments of the Spirit King in my hand are still barely enough for a while. Let them live first, and take a few more breaths of Soul Society's spirit child air. It can be regarded as a gift from them for sending me the fragments of the Spirit King. Tsunayashiro Tokunada pondered for a moment, and decided that the Lan Yan brothers would leave Spiritual Arts Academy before starting. After all, things have been exposed, and it is impossible to imagine sneaking into the Spiritual Arts Academy like before. Might as well just let things go. When Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and Jashiro Yukitaki stop focusing on Brother Lan Yan, it's not too late for him to make a move. The next day, Lan Yan and Aizen came to the classroom to teach as usual. The two seemed to have forgotten about the attack yesterday and did not mention it to anyone. However, unlike yesterday's Kido class, today's Zanpakuto class is not taught by Jashiro Yukitaki, but a man with short black hair, a thin face, and a white sleeveless robe embroidered with the number of the Juban. Yo, classmates, good morning. My name is Shiba Yixin. You can call me Teacher Yixin, or Teacher Shiba. Today I will replace Jashiro and teach you how to have a conversation with Zanpakuto. Shiba kicked open the door of the classroom wholeheartedly. Shunpo stepped forward, stepped on the podium, looked around the audience, and said with a smile on his mouth. Seeing this scene, the audience was silent. Is Shiba single-minded? Lan Yan sat in the back row, looking at this muttering father with great interest. A man who can also hang up at any time, showing no moon. Looking at the Soul Society, Apart from Yamamoto Yuanryasai Shigekuni, the man in front of him is the most worthy of his attention. Aizen noticed the change in Lan Yan's eyes, and his heart moved. Take note of the name Shiba Yixin. He decided to collect information about Captain Shinigami after class. This idiot, even if he became the captain of the 10th Division, he still remains the same as before. Shihuin Yoruichi covered his forehead with a look of disgust. As Shiba Konghei's best friend, she naturally also knows Shiba Yixin. Ahem. Okay, students, we will start class now. This lesson can be summed up in 2 words. Shiba couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed when he saw that he was a bit cold. He immediately turned around and wrote 2 large characters on the drawing board behind him with a chalk in his hand. Knife Zen. Words are like a person, showing their sharpness. One stroke at a time, like a round of unstoppable crescent moon slashing, which makes people feel like a light is on their backs. The liberation of Zanpakuto, divided into Shikai and Bankai. No matter what the solution is, the essence is to enter the spiritual world and communicate with Zanpakuto. Knowing the real name from Zanpakuto's mouth is Shikai, concretizing Zanpakuto's body and subduing it is Bankai. Being able to replace Jashiro Yukitaki as a substitute teacher, Shiba Yixin is naturally not easy to deal with. In a few words, he explained Zanpakuto's Shikai and Bankai clearly. Even Byakuya Kuchiki and Shihuin Yoruichi, who were born in the 4 great nobles, gradually showed expressions of listening carefully. Teacher Yixin, what should I do to enter the spiritual world? Komamura Sajin couldn't help asking. Have you heard a word? Sincerity leads to success. Place Zanpakuto in front of you, put your hand on the blade, pour Reiatsu into it, use the sealed state as a bond, and use Reiatsu as a guide. This is Sword Zen. While speaking with all his heart, Shiba asked Lan Yan and others to pull out the Zanpakuto and do as he said. However, except for a few people from noble families who have already mastered Shikai, such as Byakuya Kuchiki and Shihuin Yoruichi, such as Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, and Tianbei embroidery assistants are all useless. Don't be impatient, rookies. Zanpakuto is a part of Shinigami, and naturally like Shinigami, it has great personality. It doesn't mean that you can see it if you want. For example, if Zanpakuto thinks that the user's strength is too weak to be recognized by them, then even if they have mastered Zen, they would refuse to meet. Take what your teacher said about me, because my Zanpakuto character is quite irritable. It took me a whole day to master the knife Zen. As a result, my left foot has just stepped into the spiritual world, and my right foot has not yet been lifted, was kicked out of the mental space by him. Seeing that Tusen Kanami and others had made no progress and were unable to enter the spiritual space for a long time, Shiba immediately expressed relief, and even told the embarrassing thing about being kicked out of the spiritual space by Zanpakuto. Knowing that even Captain Shinigami spent a whole day learning Sword Zen, and finally was violently kicked by his own Zanpakuto, everyone who was a little impatient gradually calmed down. Impossible. Just as Tusen Kanami and others were freeing their bodies and minds and continuing to practice Sword Zen, they were frightened by Shiba's sudden scream, which made the hands holding the knife tremble violently, and was almost cut to pieces by his own Zanpakuto. Yixin, what the hell are you calling there? I almost met Zanpakuto just now. Shihuin Yoruichi also almost threw Zanpakuto out, and suddenly raised his eyebrows and said angrily. However, Shiba didn't pay attention to it wholeheartedly, but opened his mouth wide, staring at the back row of the classroom in astonishment. Seeing this, everyone subconsciously followed his gaze. Then, what is that? It's okay if you don't look at it, but when you look at it, everyone is the same as Shiba, and they are dumbfounded. In the back row of the classroom, next to Lan Yan, a huge red dragon claw appeared at an unknown time, and it was placed on his shoulder carefully. Chop! The concretization of Zanpakuto. Seeing this scene with all his heart, Shiba was stunned. What's this? Let you learn Sword Zen, your Zanpakuto will be concretized, and Bankai will be practiced. Yes, concretization of Zanpakuto is the first step in practicing Bankai, yes, but with Lan Yan's performance of Zanpakuto, is it far from surrendering? No, this has clearly succumbed to the bone. What? Is that one of the prerequisites for practicing Bankai, concrete? Doesn't that mean that Lan Yan is only one step away from mastering Bankai? Isn't this too fast? Ms. Jashiro just said yesterday that even a genius can't master Bankai without decades of practice. He just got Zanpakuto yesterday. Is he going to finish Bankai today? Shihoin Yoruichi, Urahara Kazuki and others were also shocked when they heard Shiba's single-minded words. How can it be that simple? What do you think Bankai is? Among the thousands of Shinigami in each era, there are only a handful of Shinigami who can perform Bankai. Once Bankai is achieved, the name of that Shinigami will also be forever remembered by the Soul Society. The visualization of Zanpakuto is just the first step in the practice of Bankai. It is still 1,000 miles away from the real mastery of Bankai. Don't talk about Bankai so cheaply. Byakuya Kuchiki sneered when he heard the discussion from beside him, but he couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Only because he saw with his own eyes yesterday how the man in front of him created Zanpakuto and completed Shikai in one day without using a sealed state. Byakuya, don't talk too much. Shiba shook his head wholeheartedly. Senior Yixin, do you think he can master Bankai? Byakuya Kuchiki slammed back directly. Whether he can master Bankai, I don't know. It's just that I've never seen, or even heard of, any Shinigami who can practice Sword Zen for the first time. Zanpakuto will take the initiative to visualize, come out of the spiritual space, and can't wait so much drag the Shinigami into the mental space without hesitation. At least, in the history of Soul Society that I know, there isn't one. Shiba glanced intently at Byakuya Kuchiki. Quote. Byakuya Kuchiki opened his mouth, but in the end he couldn't even utter a word of retort. Although he is young and vigorous, he is not a person with shallow knowledge. On the contrary, as the young patriarch of the Kuchiki family, his insight is far beyond that of other Shinigami. Naturally, it is clear that what Shiba said with all his heart is true. Don't talk about it far away, just talk about himself. Zanpakuto's Shikai is mastered, and Dao Zen will naturally be mastered, but the number of times I have seen Senbon Sakura is only a handful. Not to mention that like Lan Yan is doing now, Zanpakuto rushed out like a licking dog for the first time, holding hands and dragging each other into the spiritual space. Don't talk about making Zanpakuto succumb, just look at the performance of Zanpakuto after taking the initiative to concretize, making him kneel and lick Lan Yan is not a problem. Byakuya Kuchiki looked at Lan Yan, and then at Zanpakuto who had materialized beside him, and couldn't help thinking. Obviously everyone knows Shikai, so why are you Zanpakuto so good at licking? Your Zanpakuto was very happy when he learned that you wanted to see him. He has cleaned up the spiritual space because of his hospitality. Now he invites you to be a guest in the spiritual space and have a long talk with you. Just when everyone was shocked by the concrete Zanpakuto in front of them. On the other side, after Lan Yan heard the voice from his ear, he felt his shoulders sink, and then his vision became blurred. When he recovered, the scene in front of him had changed drastically. The classroom of Spiritual Arts Academy, as well as Aizen and other students around him are all gone. There is only a vast and boundless sky and a brilliant sun blooming with brilliance. Directly below is a towering mountain with incomparable stalwarts. Looking around, at the top of the mountain, there is a red dragon currently entrenched, looking at him with star-like pupils, his eyes are full of intimacy. We met for the first time, you must be Zuin. Lan Yan looked at the red dragon in front of him, although he was asking, his tone was full of determination. Good. With just a tap of the dragon's head, Zhu Yin created a huge storm in the spiritual space. Just now I seem to see you materialized and appeared in Soul Society. So, does it mean that I can master Bankai? Lan Yan stepped forward. Although it was the first meeting and also the first conversation, but because the souls came from the same source and the souls resonated, one person, one dragon, no, one person, one knife communicated and there was no life. It's like a friend who has known each other for many years. That depends on your performance. A trace of human cunning flashed across Zuin's huge dragon eyes. My performance? Lan Yan was a little puzzled. Aren't all his abilities cultivated by himself? Are you still using yourself to worry about it? Could it be that Bankai is special, and he really has to do it himself, make Zanpakuto concretize, and give in completely? As long as you promise, when you fight with people in the future, the priority, no, you must be the first to use me to fight, not the 3 guys who flew away after I breathed out, then I will help you practice your Bankai. Gone. Zhu Yin curled her lips, her tone full of disgust and displeasure. Quote? When Lan Yan heard this, 3 question marks popped up in his mind. 3 guys. Do you mean Reiatsu, Kido, and Kendo? Really exactly 3. That's them. Zuin seemed to see what Lan Yan was thinking, and before he could speak, he spoke first. Aren't Zanpakuto, Reiatsu, Kido, Kendo all Shinigami's power? Don't you have any other holidays? The corner of Lan Yan's mouth twitched slightly. It is true that it is the power of Shinigami, but Zanpakuto is the root of Shinigami, above all else. What is chopping the fist and walking the ghost? A mere gravel is not enough for me, but is it worthy to sit on an equal footing with me? Candle Yin looked disdainful. Lan Yan, are you sure Zuin is your name and not your first name? Are you sure your last name is not Uchiha, but your first name is Zuin? It's fine if you can negotiate conditions with yourself, and you can pretend to be coercive. How, can't you? Then Bankai, go practice by yourself. Seeing that Lan Yan didn't say a word, Zuin thought that Lan Yan didn't want to agree to his request. Ask you something. Our conversation here, Reiatsu, can they hear? Lan Yan felt a toothache after hearing this. Fortunately, in Zanpakuto, Reiatsu, and Zonquanzugi, there is only one Zuin who can visualize and talk face to face, otherwise, those abilities have their own personalities. Each of them asked themselves to give priority to using him to fight in the battle, and each of them was vying for favor, so he had enough headaches. My game, my turf, my rules. If they want to come, they have to see if I can open the door. No one can get in here except you. Candle Yin Dragon's face is full of arrogance. Call. After Lan Yan heard this, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, Lan Yan, have you thought about it yet? Answer or not. Give me a sweet word. Zuin swooped down from the top of the mountain. In midair, she transformed from a 100-foot-long red dragon into a woman with long red hair, a good figure, and a bit of coldness and strength between her brows. She stood in front of Aaron and stared straight at him, looking into his eyes. It looks very much like when you ask your boyfriend to buy you a bag. Okay, I promise you. Lan Yan answered crisply. Absolutely nothing to do with Reiatsu, Kido, and Kendo will never turn red-haired girl. He's just too strong to improve. Real, you agreed. Before seeing Lan Yan's change, Zuin agreed very readily. While he was happy, he was also a little suspicious. Certainly, you know that although I have many abilities, among them, I like you the most, and you are the most important. As you said earlier, Zanpakuto is the root of Shinigami. Lan Yan opened his mouth and came. He looked very much like the man who cheated his sister into bed. You didn't lie to me. Facing the sudden Wang Za who hit his face directly, the corners of Zuin's mouth slightly raised, and Ruth secretly delighted. Shinigami do not lie to Zanpakuto. Lan Yan nodded. That's what you said. Okay, let's stop talking this time. I still have things to do, let's talk next time. Zhu Yin believed it immediately, then put his hand on Lan Yan's shoulder, turned him around, and gently piled him together. The scene in front of me suddenly changed like a horse watching a lantern. When the picture was refrozen, the familiar classroom in Spiritual Arts Academy and the faces in all directions were looking at me eagerly. From Shinigami nobility down to Rukongai origin. Everyone in the class, including Aizen, stared at him in unison. Because you left an excellent first impression when you met Zanpakuto for the first time, your Zanpakuto's favorability and recognition for you have soared, so I decided to tell you the second liberation language so that you can master it. The complete Shikai of Zanpakuto, the strongest light and dark system. As soon as Lan Yan's consciousness broke away from the mental space, he heard a voice coming from his ear, and at the same time, a brand new liberation language appeared in his mind out of thin air. Having taken a Zanpakuto class once, he knows very well that he can master Shikai by calling out the Shikai name of Zanpakuto correctly. But with the same Zanpakuto, except for the name of Shikai, there will be one or even several liberation languages. Different liberating languages, with the Shikai name of Zanpakuto, the power of Zanpakuto liberated is also different. Such as Urahara Kazuki's Hongji. Wake up, Hongji. Sing, Hongji. Crack it, Hongji. Restrain, Hongji. Play with fire, Hongji. There are 5 kinds of liberation languages. Although Shikai's name remains the same, Zanpakuto's ability will change accordingly after shouting different liberation words. The same goes for Lan Yan's Zanpakuto Candle Yin. Not only that, after knowing Zanpakuto's real name and all the liberation languages, Lanyan just learned that his Zanpakuto is not only the strongest Zanpakuto in the Flash system, but also the strongest Zanpakuto in the Dark system. Two systems in one. Knowing the history of Zanpakuto, he knows very well that Candle Yin is the first dual-element Zanpakuto in the history of Soul Society, and it is also the first Zanpakuto with the strongest dual-element system. Flash is the strongest. Darkness is the strongest. None of them. Lanyan, what does it feel like to be dragged into the mental space by Zanpakuto forcibly? Can you share it with the teacher or everyone? Seeing that Lanyan had broken out of the Sword Zen state, Shiba couldn't help but walked over, staring at the strongest genius in front of him, whom Jashiro Yukitake called Spiritual Arts Academy in 2000 years. From the other party, Zanpakuto ran out of his own embodiment, and dragged Shinigami into the spiritual space to talk and communicate. He felt that this class was not in vain. As the owner of the branch house of the Shiba family, he thinks he is well informed, but this is the first time he has seen a knife Zen like Lanyan. Feel it. It is to communicate with Zanpakuto face to face, and to know everything about her more clearly. After that, I mastered another liberation language. Lanyan pondered for a while, but did not hide it. After all, it's no secret either. Other people can do similar things after mastering the knife Zen. Of course, Zanpakuto's ability, he will not reveal. That's not sharing, that's idiocy. Which powerful Shinigami doesn't cover up his abilities tightly? Even Aizen was hiding Kyoka Suigetsu's true power until both Zanquan Zugi and Reiatsu reached the apex of Shinigami. Did everyone hear that? This is Sword Zen and the correct way to practice Zanpakuto. The more you know, the more you will master Zanpakuto, and accordingly the more power you will be able to liberate and master. Shiba nodded wholeheartedly. Of course, he knows that it is a taboo for Shinigami to ask others about Zanpakuto's ability, so he intends to ask about Lanyan's ability at all. He just hopes that the other party can share what he has gained after talking with Zanpakuto, which can be used as experience. Among you, especially Shinigami who are born in noble families, you should have heard such a saying. Mastering Bankai is just a new beginning. As Shinigami continues to practice, Bankai will continue to evolve. This sentence applies not only to Bankai, but also to Shikai. Shiba looked around everyone wholeheartedly, and said word by word. Just take Lanyan's conversation with Zanpakuto through Dao Zen just now, and you can master Shikai's deeper abilities. So, mastering Shikai is not the end, but a new beginning. As you continue to practice, Shikai will continue to evolve. Practice the sword meditation well, regard Zanpakuto as a partner, and resonate with each other's souls. Shikai will have it, and Bankai will also have it. Have to say, it's not unreasonable why Jashiro Yukitake asked Shiba to take over as a substitute. Except for being quite funny when he first appeared on the stage, his insight, experience, and knowledge are impeccable in every aspect. In a few words, the knowledge recorded in the textbook is extremely detailed, and it can even be described as complicated, and it is clearly explained. This is the foundation brought by strength and noble origin. Shiba, but one of the 5 nobles in the past. With Lanyan as an example and stimulus, coupled with Shiba's single-minded explanation, Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin and others are more and more eager for Sword Zen, even Byakuya Kuchiki, Urahara Kazuki and others who have been exposed to Sword Zen since childhood intense interest was aroused. They all held Zanpakuto in their hands, each with great interest, and kept trying to communicate with Zanpakuto. However, this is not volitionism. The success of Dao Zen does not depend on personal will, but depends on one's own talent and strength. Urahara Kazuki, Shihuen Yoruichi and others who have mastered Shikai are fortunate. Although they cannot enter the spiritual space and have an interview with Zanpakuto, they can still hear Zanpakuto's voice ringing in their ears from time to time. But Tianbei Shoju and Komamura Sajin, who just got the sealed state yesterday, were not so lucky. After a while of operation, it is like the first time Pluton for ordinary people, with black eyes and nothing. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, I can perform a Zanpakuto liberation for you. Maybe you will gain something after seeing Shikai up close. At this time, Aizen seemed to be aware of the predicament of Komamura Sajin and others, got up from the chair, and said to them. Chapter 21. What, Aizen, you want to show us your Zanpakuto Shikai? Hearing that Aizen was going to show Shikai for himself and others, it immediately caused a commotion in the department. Especially Komamura Sajin and Tianbei Shoju, their faces were extremely excited. Even those of Rukongai origin know that Shinigami's Zanpakuto liberation is the greatest secret. After all, if the ability is known by others, it is easy to be targeted. But now Aizen is not hesitating to take the risk of exposing Shikai's ability. They have only known each other for a day, and even their names may not be correct, and they are Shikai Zanpakuto in full. Not for the individual, not for the benefit, do not care about gains and losses, do not ask for rewards, just to let them have some insights. Yes, my Zanpakuto is the flowing water system, which disturbs the enemy through the chaotic reflection of fog and water, causing them to kill each other. Would you guys like to see me Shikai? Aizen smiled slightly, and, bluntly, revealed his Shikai ability, showing the style of a gentleman. Shihuin Yoruichi. What a frank, what a humble gentleman. Urahara Kazuki. Ability and virtue match, I am not as good as Aizen. Byakuya Kuchiki. It's a pity that such a person is not aristocratic, honest, generous, and above board. Shiba said with one heart. Among the people I have met, no one is more open-minded than Aizen. Lan Yan. Listening to the constant praise resounding in my ears, I looked at Aizen, who was full of gentlemanly style in the crowd. Lan Yan was silent, then lowered his head slightly, propping his forehead with one hand, just covering his eyes completely. No way. He was afraid that if he didn't do this, Urahara Kazuki and Shiba Yixin, two guys who looked sloppy but were actually extremely smart, would see the look in his eyes at this time. That's the look of an idiot. Kyoka Suigetsu was liberated, and there were people scrambling to see it. Isn't this an idiot? Seeing that his younger brother started to sing on stage, Lan Yan could only bow his head, not wanting to affect his dancing. We would. Aizen, thank you for your kindness. If you need me, Komamura Sajin, just ask. Being a classmate is in my heart. Komamura Sajin, Tianbei Shoju and others expressed their willingness to watch Aizen's Zanpakuto Shikai. Even the blind Tusen Kanami came over to join in the fun. Although unable to see, Reiatsu perception can perceive the changes when Aizen Shikai. Not only them, even Byakuya Kuchiki, Shihuin Yoruichi and others who have already mastered Shikai also looked over. Shikai of Zanpakuto, especially a Shikai who is a rare Shinigami genius in 100 years. Who is not interested, even though Aizen has revealed his ability in advance, and it is very likely that this is not Shikai's full ability, but it still does not affect their desire to eat melons. One look at Kyoka Suigetsu, and the five senses are passers-by from now on. Lan Yan shook his head slightly. Ahem, you all remembered. Aizen is willing to let you all, this is because he has the style of a gentleman. After reading it, you should not only be grateful, but the most important thing is to lock your mouth tightly, forget everything about today, and absolutely not reveal Aizen's Zanpakuto Shikai to anyone other than the present. At this time, Shiba Yixin coughed lightly, and sternly shouted at everyone in an unprecedentedly severe tone. Yes, Teacher Yixin. Everyone in the room nodded one after another, with solemn expressions and solemn tones. Don't be so cautious, we are classmates now, we will be colleagues in the future, and maybe comrades in arms. Even if you say it, it's nothing, don't worry about it. After all, I will go to other classes at Spiritual Arts Academy and show Shikai to other students. Aizen said indifferently. Aizen, why? Everyone was stunned. But all Shinigami, no matter what their origins are, after mastering Shikai, they all cover up their abilities tightly, wishing to silence those who have seen their Shikai. There is no one like Aizen who shows Shikai to people everywhere, wishing everyone in the entire Spiritual Arts Academy could watch it. In the classes other than the first class, most of the students are mediocre in aptitude and not outstanding in talent. Compared with you, they are even more like Yingo and Haoyu. It's okay if you come from a noble family, but most of them are from Rukongai. I am also from Rukongai. I know how difficult it is for ordinary people to become a Shinigami. Every step forward on this road often requires paying 10 times more than the nobles. Double, 100 times, 1,000 times harder. So, I hope to do my best for them, so that they can go further and further on the road of Shinigami cultivation. Although it may not be useful just by observing my Shikai, this is the only way I can think of, way to help them. Aizen gently pushed the brown-framed mirror on the bridge of his nose, and shook his head. So, you don't need to have any worries. Because, after I graduate from Spiritual Arts Academy in the future, if I can make a difference in Gote 13, I will try to become a lecturer of Spiritual Arts Academy so that every student who aspires to become a Shinigami can see my Shikai. If I can add more Shinigami to Seraiti, so that more people can realize the Shinigami dream, then why not let the entire Soul Society know about my Shikai ability, mere Shikai, not worth mentioning. As soon as these words came out, no matter it was Shiba Yixin or Urahara Kazuki, they were all in awe. Quote. Seeing the crazy scene of the King of Kings, exuding the demeanor of the eternal saint of the Soul Society all over his body, Lan Yan can imagine how wonderful the expressions of those who have watched Kyoka Suigetsu Shikai after knowing the truth are. At this moment, he understood why in the future, the Shinigami captains and vice-captains of Vizard will hate Aizen to the core. Urahara Kazuki even carefully prepared a series of Kido, traps, and conspiracies for Aizen, wishing to kill the king. Emotions forced Wang to act too hard at the beginning. This is simply more vicious than stabbing someone with a knife. Lan Yan, don't you watch? Shihuin Yoruichi couldn't help asking when he saw that Lan Yan was keeping his head on his head the whole time, making it impossible to see his eyes or his expression clearly. Although things like Shikai will not be seen one less time, and one person's view is the same as everyone's view, but let's leave it to those who need it. Aizen has another goal besides wanting the world to see his Kyoka Suigetsu, which is to surpass me, so I don't want to take advantage of him. A person may not be great, but he cannot be mean either. Lan Yan waved his hand, and continued to lower his head and cover his eyes. Lan Yan, you brothers are so kind, compared to us, you are more like nobles. If there are more Shinigami like you among the nobles of Seraiti, then the Soul Society will definitely become better than it is now. Shihuin Yoruichi was also slightly moved when he heard this. Although Lan Yan is not Aizen, he is the kind of great man who is a salary earner, but he is also an upright person. No wonder the two are brothers. Even Byakuya Kuchiki, who was defeated by Lan Yan and thought the face of the Kuchiki family was damaged, couldn't help but look sideways at him. Aside from the facts, although Lan Yan speaks lightly of the Kuchiki family, he has to admit that he is also an upright person. Before the fiasco ended, he didn't hurt me at all, and he didn't further humiliate me. In the final analysis, it's also the reason why I followed Grandpa's arrangement and deliberately sought out. Byakuya Kuchiki recalled the previous conflict with Lan Yan, although he didn't regret it, but he was also relieved. There is no more discomfort before. But the place still needs to be found. Not to mention that he has grown up so big and has never lost. He is just the face of the Kuchiki family and cannot be offended. Quote. Lan Yan heard Shihuin Yoruichi say this, and also noticed the change in Byakuya Kuchiki's eyes when he looked at him. He didn't speak. What can I say? Go with Shihuin Yoruichi and Byakuya Kuchiki. What the hell is going to watch Kyoka Suigetsu Shikai? Even if he knows how to break it, he is confident that after watching Kyoka Suigetsu, he can use his Zanpakuto to resist complete hypnosis, but why not watch it? It is still necessary to eat melons in groups. Crack it, Kyoka Suigetsu. At this time, Aizen walked from his seat to the podium, reached out and pulled out Zanpakuto from the scabbard at his waist, and then, under the gaze of a pair of eyes, he turned Zanpakuto upside down so that the tip of the knife was facing the ground. Click. With the sound of the mirror shattering, everyone suddenly noticed that thick fog and water began to spread around Aizen, and then phantoms that looked exactly like him appeared out of thin air, no matter whether it was discerned by the naked eye or perceived by Reiatsu perception. Which phantom appears, which one is the real body? Clang. When Byakuya Kuchiki looked carefully and thought about how to crack the Kyoka Suigetsu, a knife sounded from his ear, and then a Zanpakuto came out from behind and rested on his neck. Feeling the cold edge coming from his neck, the muscles of his body tensed uncontrollably, and at the same time, like a frightened cat, the hairs all over his body stood up. Offended, Kuchiki. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional. When Aizen cast Kyoka Suigetsu's Shikai, instead of picking anyone else, he chose Byakuya Kuchiki, who had clashed with Lan Yan, and directly put Zanpakuto on the opponent's neck. Quote. Byakuya Kuchiki didn't speak, but his pupils shrank slightly, and his heart was like a tsunami erupting, rolling up turbulent waves, unable to calm down for a long time. He originally thought that the only person in the first-class class who could beat him was Lan Yan, apart from Shihun Yoruichi, who was older than him and was also one of the four nobles. Never thought about it. In front of Lan Yan, he couldn't even hold a Reiatsu, and he couldn't even take a Hado-si by Lei. In front of Aizen, he was also vulnerable. In an instant, someone put a knife around his neck, and he had no ability to resist during this period. But why is it always me who gets hurt? A younger brother is terrifyingly strong. Being an older brother is terrifyingly strong. These brothers are not easy. No wonder Jashiro wants me to pay more attention to them and never let them go astray. Shiba turned his head wholeheartedly, seeing Aizen come up behind Byakuya Kuchiki silently and hold him with a knife. He was also extremely surprised. Reiatsu comparable to Captain Shinigami. Plus this hand Zanpakuto Shikai's abilities. An ordinary vice captain would be instantly killed by him just by meeting him. Is this Lan Yan's younger brother? Very strong. This kind of ability, used to attack and kill, is simply terrifying. No wonder it is called a rare genius in a century. Seeing that Byakuya Kuchiki was beaten in seconds, everyone was amazed by Aizen's strength. Although it is not as powerful as Lan Yan's no. 4 Hado and Bai Lei cracking ground 100 meters yesterday, it shakes people's hearts. However, this ability to put a knife on someone's neck quietly in front of everyone still makes people shudder. Obviously Aizen has taken the lead in disclosing Kyoka Suigetsu's ability, but Byakuya Kuchiki is still difficult to distinguish between true and false, and lost instantly. Aizen, I think your ability is very suitable for the second team. Why don't your two brothers join the second team together after graduating from Spiritual Arts Academy? In addition to the second division and the head of the army, the deputy captain of the police patrol team, the supervision team, the captain of the lighting team, etc., you can choose. Shihun Yoruichi looked at Lan Yan, then at Aizen, and had an idea in his heart. Ahem, Yoruichi-san, don't forget now, you are not even an officer. Also, now we are in class, not your job fair. By the way, Lan Yan, Aizen, if you want to join Gote 13, I personally think that the 10th team is your best choice. Don't worry about the treatment, it's not worse than the second team. Shiba insisted on showing his identity as a teacher, interrupted Shihun Yoruichi's solicitation, then changed the subject and sent an invitation letter directly to brother Lan Yan. As the captain of the 10th squad, it can be said that he is sincerely invited to invite him personally, as a corporal. In any case, it looks much more reliable than Shihun Yoruichi. It is our honor to be appreciated by Teacher Yixin. However, we are still in the stage of studying, and we should wait until graduation to consider the matter of joining the team. At that time, we will give priority to the Juban team. All Lan Yan present, counting one by one, all hit Kyoka Suigetsu. He also put his hand from his forehead, and then declined Shiba Yixin with a light smile. As for Shihun Yoruichi, filter directly. Although he is the patriarch of Shihun, he has no role other than his name. Before taking power, there were many people in the Shihun family who had more power to speak than Shihun Yoruichi. I think so too. However, I still want to thank Teacher Yixin for the invitation. Aizen followed suit. After experiencing the attack last night and learning that the people behind the scenes were from the 4 great nobles, the two of them have already discussed and finalized their path after graduation. Compared to Shihun Yoruichi's second team, or Shiba Yixin's 10th team, they have better choices. Right, although you are all excellent, there is still some time before graduation. The top priority is still to focus on learning and precipitation. Shiba listened to the words wholeheartedly, and became more and more appreciative of brother Lan Yan. Outstanding talent, but not arrogant. Powerful, but not arrogant. The former is majestic and ambitious. The latter is elegant, gentle and frank. Although the types are different, they are all born captains. I don't know if I was shocked by Aizen's strength, or after seeing Kyoka Suigetsu's Shikai, I really felt something. Next, when the sword meditation was performed again, many people heard the voice of Zanpakuto. It's just that some are intermittent, and some are clearer. After making significant progress, when Komamura Sajin, Tianbei Shoju and others performed sword meditation, their spirits became more focused and their minds became more empty. After class, Aizen brought Zanpakuto to other classes just like he had done in front of Shiba Yixin and others. After he expressed his intention to come, all the teachers and students in each class showed astonishment, which immediately turned into ecstasy and gratitude. They all sat upright and received a set of Kyoku Suigetsu with eyes full of expectation and respect. Full meal. There is something for everyone, and it never fails. In just one afternoon, Spiritual Arts Academy looked like the original Spiritual Arts Academy, but in fact, the entire Spiritual Arts Academy, from teachers to students, without exception, all fell under Kyoku Suigetsu. What all the teachers and students of Spiritual Arts Academy see, smell, hear, touch, and even perceive reiatsu, etc., are all what Aizen wants them to see, smell, hear, and touch, and perceive. Congratulations to all the teachers and students of Spiritual Arts Academy, and welcome to the Kyoku Suigetsu package. All of this was seen by Lan Yan. While secretly congratulating all the teachers and students of Spiritual Arts Academy in his heart, he also knew that it was coming soon. Whether it is to recover the debt from the 4 nobles that was attacked last night, or the original plan of the 2 of them, that day is not far away. For the rest, just wait for the ferment of time and the moment of early graduation. Aizen, he really did what he said. Lan Yan, Aizen, these 2 brothers, if anyone is born in my Shiba clan, why worry that Shiba cannot be revived? Shiba, who is still at Spiritual Arts Academy and hasn't left yet, also sees Aizen's every move. Seeing this student who took one of his classes, he actually managed to unite his words with his deeds. After fulfilling all the bold words he had thrown in the classroom before, he was full of praise and sighed secretly at the same time. At the same time, Aizen's words and deeds were also transmitted to another person who locked him and Lan Yan in the first place. In the captain's office, Yamamoto Genryusai listened to the report from the members of the first team of special forces kneeling in front of him. That's a thing called regret. Yes, he felt a little bit regretful about his temporary change decision last night. The fear brought about by the talent of the Lan Yan brothers. The possibility of becoming the 2nd or 3rd sword ghost brings concerns. There is also the attack, the undercurrent hidden behind it. The combination of the 3 eventually prompted Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni to give up his plan to bring the Lan Yan brothers into the gate. But now, after learning about Lan Yan's conversation with Shihuen Yoruichi in the classroom and what Aizen did, he not only feels slightly regretful, but also questioned his decision last night for the first time. Sasaki, do you think the old man did something wrong? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni spoke suddenly, and asked the vice captain Chojiro Sasaki who was standing beside him. The captain's concern should be that he is worried that he will create the birth of the 2 sword ghosts by himself, and play an accomplice role in speeding up the process and making them stronger. However, I believe that the failure of the Lan Yan brothers to enter the head team Nagato does not mean that they will become sword demons that endanger the laws of the Soul Society in the future, society's regular sword demon. One thought as the sword demon. Yamamoto Shigekuni. One thought as the captain. Yamamoto Yuanryusai Shigekuni. You are worried that you will play a negative role. Have you ever thought that you may also play a positive role? Chojiro Sasaki pondered for a while, and then expressed his opinion. Sasaki, what do you mean? If the old man puts them in the door early, it will not only make the Lan Yan brothers grow up faster, but also allow them to get more correct guidance, and avoid what the old man did when he was young, to a greater extent, go on a crooked path first, and then correct the evil, don't you? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni has a premonition. Missing yesterday is equivalent to completely missing the relationship between master and apprentice with brother Lan Yan. It's no use even going to look for brother Lan Yan now. He didn't believe that his sudden appearance yesterday and his sudden exit would not let the other party notice the clues. Once suspicion and estrangement are planted, it is not so easy to eliminate. What's more, judging from the talents shown by the Lan Yan brothers, I really don't necessarily appreciate the teachings of his Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Yes, actually, in my opinion, you don't have to stick to the master-student relationship. The so-called master-student relationship is just a status. Could it be that you are not a master student, you can't give them correct guidance and teaching? Don't forget, you are the captain of Gote 13, the founder and principal of Spiritual Arts Academy. Brother Lan Yan is not your disciple, but also your student, and the future will be the captain of Shinigami under your command, just like the past, the same as the captain of the first-generation court guard. Chojiro Sasaki has lived for more than 2,000 years, and has often traveled to the world to perform missions and get in touch with the thoughts of various countries in the world. Although he is loyal to Yamamoto Genryusai, his thinking is not as rigid as him. That's right, after what you said, the old man has lost his mind. Well, old man, Lan Yan and his brother will graduate from Spiritual Arts Academy soon. At that time, if they don't have a fan team they like, then you can go on behalf of the old man and invite them to join the first team and take over the position of Kuchiki Hibiki. After all, he is the son-in-law of the Kuchiki family, and sooner or later he will go to the sixth team to take over. Captain Sasaki, what do you think? When Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni heard the words, he suddenly felt enlightened, and immediately thought of Unohana Retsu. Didn't this villain, unprecedented in the Soul Society, return to the right path and uphold justice under his guidance? There is no master-student relationship between Unohana Retsu and him, but it does not affect him to guide each other and become Kenpachi of Gotei 13. With this in mind, Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni immediately made a decision. That is, after the Lan Yan brothers graduate, they will be recruited into the team, and then in the name of the captain, they will be taught to the brothers to cut fists and walk away ghosts, and to abide by the rules of the Soul Society. As long as it is under his nose, since he can prevent it before it happens, he can also stop it in time when the two of them really go wrong in the future. I think so too. Chojiro Sasaki agrees. Just when Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni opened up his rigid thinking and decided to arrange Lan Yan and Aizen in the first team after graduation, another Shinigami captain in Gotei 13 also noticed them. Lan Yan, he's fine. But this Aizen, something is wrong. Very wrong. In the office of the 5th Division, Hirako Shinji looked at the two documents in his hand, his brows gradually knitting together. Idiot, what's wrong? Isn't he very good? Other Shinigami hide Zanpakuto's ability as deep as they can. Unlike this freshman named Aizen, in order to help people in the class communicate with Zanpakuto with Sword Zen, he did not hesitate to liberate himself in person. Zanpakuto even made other students in the class watch him as Shikai. You are the bad water in your own stomach, so you can't see other people's, okay. When Surugaki Hiyori heard Hirako Shinji say bad things about Aizen, she laughed and sneered back on the spot. It can be seen that although brother Lan Yan has only been enrolled for a few days, he is already well known in Gotei 13. Up to the captain, down to the captain and deputy captain, basically everyone knows the deeds of the two. If he is just helping his classmates, then I absolutely understand, and even like you, I regard him as a good person, a very good person. But now, the entire Spiritual Arts Academy, everyone has seen him Shikai. It's not right, it's terribly wrong, and I'm sure it's a dangerous guy. Hirako Shinji shook his head, firmly convinced that Aizen had ulterior motives. That's why you call Aizen a bad guy. I don't think you are a good person, idiot. Surugaki Hiyori curled his lips with disgust. Sure enough, I knew that it would take a lot of effort for you to understand with your IQ. Forget it, whoever let me choose the vice captain myself. Stupid is a bit stupid, but it's better than this guy with glasses called Aizen, who harbors evil intentions. As Hirako Shinji spoke, he picked up the Aizen document on the desk. If you haven't reached the age of old eyesight, please focus on the column where Aizen was born. Finished. He threw the document in his hand towards Surugaki Hiyori. Born, Rukongai, North 80th District. What's the problem? Clean, and not from Hueco Mundo. Surugaki Hiyori saw that Hirako Shinji spoke with confidence, and also reached out to take Aizen's information, and read it carefully. North 80 District, what is that place? One of the 4 most chaotic areas in Soul Society. Tell me that a ruthless man who came out of there is a great man, who would believe it? Hirako Shinji crossed his arms and crossed his legs. Who stipulated that those who come out of Area 80 must be vicious? Did you stipulate? Or his brother, Lan Yan protected him very well, so Aizen is like his name, out of the mud and not stained. After all, you know Lan Yan's strength. A vice-captain level Shinigami, together with 9 members who are equivalent to 3 seats, formed a small team. In the end, he killed them all by himself, just like chopping melons and vegetables. Quote, Surugaki Hiyori still didn't want to believe that a modest gentleman like Aizen would be the one who harbored evil intentions in Hiriko Shinji's mouth. Sure enough, you shouldn't argue with a fool, or your IQ will be pulled to the same level as the opponent, and then she will be defeated by her rich combat experience. As soon as Hiriko Shinji heard it, he died on the spot to convince Surugaki Hiyori's heart. But at the same time, he became more wary of Aizen in his heart. Just listen to the facts, but not the person. Surugaki Hiyori actually believes in Aizen's virtuous gentleman, but what about the people who have seen Aizen? Didn't everyone admire him and give him absolute trust? Thinking of this, he only felt creepy. Aizen. Hiriko Shinji stared at the photo of Aizen on the data. It was a gentle face like sunshine, but he saw the coldness like an ice cave. Snapped. He looked at it for a moment, his eyes flickering. Sudden. Hiriko Shinji put down Erlang's legs, then got up, and walked outside without saying a word. Idiot, where are you going? Seeing this, Surugaki Hiyori immediately chased after him. To meet, of course, that Aizen Sosuke who is untainted from the mud of your mouth. Hiriko Shinji put on the long-sleeved haori that symbolizes the 5th division, and walked towards the 10th division in a leisurely manner. Mao Kendo Gym. 15 minutes before class time, Lanyan and Aizen walked in from the main entrance of the Kendo Hall side by side. It seems that because of the knife Zen learned from Shiba Yixin yesterday, the strength of most people has improved a lot overnight. Especially students from Rukongai. At this time, Tusen Kanami and others had already stood inside in 2s and 3s, quietly waiting for Shiba's arrival. Lanyan, Aizen. Seeing the Lanyan brothers coming in, no matter whether it was Tusen Kanami and Tianbei Shusuke from Rukongai, or Shihuin Yoruichi and Urahara Kazuki from noble backgrounds, they greeted them first without exception. If Lanyan is recognized as the strongest chief student of Spiritual Arts Academy, and with his absolute strength and talent, he overwhelms every genius in the first class, then Aizen as the Shikai who unconditionally showed Zanpakuto to everyone yesterday, impressed them with his admirable character and modest character. Especially Tusen Kanami and Tianbei Shusuke, out of gratitude to Aizen, after learning that the other party likes tofu, they prepared breakfast of tofu and tofu products early, waiting for his arrival. Thanks. Aizen smiled like a spring breeze, and took the breakfast prepared by the two for himself with both hands. Here, this is yours. Just when he was about to give one of them to Lanyan, a chocolate-colored palm suddenly stretched out, holding a beautifully packaged bento box in front of Lanyan. Do I have a share too? Lanyan looked at the bento box handed over by Shihuin Yoruichi, and he was slightly taken aback. He was not surprised at all that King Bai had someone preparing breakfast. After all, aside from Shikai who showed Kyoka Suigetsu to everyone yesterday, Aizen alone is extremely popular as a character on weekdays. In fact, on the way to Mao Kendo Gym, several waves of students have brought breakfast to Aizen. But he didn't play this kind of persona. Not to mention, let the young patriarch of the Shihuin family prepare breakfast for himself. You have to taste it well, don't know what's good or bad. This is our Miss Shihuin, who came to me specially and made it for you after a whole night of messing around. Lanyan, you have to eat with a grateful heart. Before Shihuin Yoruichi could speak, Shiba Kuranaku, the only girl in the first class, had already spoken first, and of course his words were full of ridicule. Kong, what are you talking about? Le is just a whim on my mind. I want to try cooking by myself, and I happen to cook too much. It's a pity to throw away food with a high concentration of spiritual particles. Didn't you bring it here and let everyone share it? At this time, Shihuin Yoruichi was still a chocolate girl, not a chocolate royal sister, but he didn't have the freedom and arrogance that didn't care about his nakedness when he was transformed from a cat into a human form for more than 100 years in the future. In the words of her little tale, Sui Feng, it is noble and gorgeous, and possesses terrifying strength. Not to mention naked at every turn, at Soul Society, it's covered up from top to bottom right now. Facing Shiba Konghei's ridicule, I am more or less embarrassed. Everyone, I am also everyone, so that means I also have a share. Hearing that Shihuin Yoruichi said it was for everyone to eat, Urahara Kazuki immediately stretched out his hand with a smile, but he froze when he was halfway away from the bento box. Just because Shihuin Yoruichi stared straight at him, with an expression that if you dared to stretch out your hand, I would dare to chop it off. Emotions, everyone, refers to Lan Yan. Urahara Kazuki withdrew his hand indistinctly. It's not worth losing a pair of hands that can create Hogyoku for a bite of breakfast. Thanks. Lan Yan glanced at Shihoin Yoruichi, who sneaked a peek at himself from time to time, but when he looked at the other party, he immediately turned his gaze away, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he opened the lunch box. Eggs, beef, purple potatoes, and a carton of milk. It looks sparse and ordinary, but in fact everything is spiritual food, and the concentration of spiritual particles is quite high. Long-term consumption will have a significant effect on the accumulation and improvement of Reiatsu. Obviously, this is the unpretentious diet of the Four Nobles. How about it? Shihoin Yoruichi asked, pretending to be casual. For food, I only give 97 points, and the other 3 points are for your heart. Lan Yan took an egg coupon, put it in his mouth, and chewed it lightly. Seeing Shihoin Yoruichi looking at him eagerly, he said with a smile. Snort. Of course, you don't even look at who cooks. Recently, I cook it myself. If I accidentally cook too much, I'll bring you some more. Shihoin Yoruichi raised his neck and turned his back to prevent Lan Yan from seeing the smile on his lips. Student Urahara, if you haven't eaten breakfast yet, I still have breakfast here. And so are the other students. Anyone who hasn't eaten can come and get it. I can't finish it by myself. It's a waste to lose it. Aizen saw Urahara Kazuki watching from the side. Not wanting him to disturb Lan Yan having breakfast, he walked to the door of the kendo gym, then opened the door and pulled it towards the door. The bento box like a hill immediately caught the eyes of Urahara Kazuki and others. At a glance, there must be at least 100 breakfasts. How popular you are, Aizen. Urahara Kazuki stared dumbfounded. If Spiritual Arts Academy had a strength list and a popularity list. Needless to say, your two brothers will definitely dominate the list for a long time. Shiba Kyan stared dumbfounded. You can too. Show everyone at Spiritual Arts Academy your Shikai. In Tianbei's words, he revealed his admiration for Aizen. That's fine. Uncle Yixin found out, and he will definitely clean up for me. Shiba Kyan raised his hands and shook his head. He doesn't have the lofty awareness of Aizen. Even if he has, Shiba Yixin, and other people in the Shiba family will not allow him to do so. After all, Zanpakuto's abilities are the best kept secret for Shinigami in general, let alone Shinigami nobles. What are you still doing? You're welcome, just take it. It doesn't taste good when it's cold. Aizen spoke again. Everyone, look at me, and I look at you. Although everyone here has already had breakfast, they still went to get it. The first was Urahara Kazuki, followed by Tusen Konami, Komamura Sajin, Shiba Kyan, etc., and finally even Byakuya Kuchiki followed for a box for the first time ever. I have to say that the dinner table is indeed one of the best ways to get closer. Although there is a bento for each person, but while eating and chatting, coupled with the relationship between classmates, they seem to have forgotten the identities of nobles and commoners, as well as enmity, festivals and so on. Compared with the previous few days, when they met, they just nodded slightly, without even saying hello. At this moment, the relationship between everyone can be described as a triple jump. However, when everyone finished eating, there were less than 5 minutes left before the class time, and the substitute teacher Shiba Yixin was still nowhere to be seen. Where did Yixin teacher go? Uncle is not such an unpunctual person. Strange. The class bell rang, but Shiba Yixin still didn't show up, and neither did Jashiro Yukitaki, so everyone couldn't help being a little suspicious. Just when Shihoin Yoruichi couldn't help but want to step on Shunpo to go out for a look, a blonde figure in long-sleeved Haori opened the door of Mao Kendo Gym. Keep everyone waiting for a long time. I'm meeting for the first time. I'm Hirako Shinji. I'm the substitute teacher for Captain Yixin. Because Captain Yixin is ill, today I will teach you for him what is the way of swordsmanship. Hirako Shinji strode forward as he introduced himself. Lan Yan and the others had strange expressions upon hearing this. Substitute for a substitute teacher. Has the problem of teaching staff at Spiritual Arts Academy become so severe? In order to let you understand things like kendo more intuitively, I need a brave classmate to be my assistant. It's just you, the handsome brown-haired guy with glasses. Teacher heard that you are very willing to help others. In order to help students learn Dao Zen, you did not hesitate to release your Zanpakuto ability to show to all the students. I guess you don't mind helping the teacher. Hiriko Shinji didn't even look at it, his gaze was fixed directly on Aizen. This guy. Lan Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Before, when Hiriko Shinji appeared, he was only skeptical, but now he is basically sure. The opponent is coming for Aizen. But it's also normal. In the original time and space, the Forced King chose to hide his strength and bide his time in the early stage, and was still regarded as a dangerous person by Hiriko Shinji. Now he does not deliberately hide his talent, which will naturally attract the attention of the other party more easily. This is not. Before graduating from Spiritual Arts Academy, Hiriko Shinji arrived. Sensei Shinji, this is my honor. Hearing this, Aizen's eyes flashed an imperceptible cold light under the frame mirror. He remained calm on the surface, but there was still a spring-like smile hanging from the corner of his mouth. What is the way of the sword? In my opinion, the teacher, is one horizontal and one vertical. I stand, you lie down, this is the way of the sword. Student Aizen, in order to let you and everyone experience my kendo most intuitively, I will trouble you as my teacher's actual opponent. Hiriko Shinji raised a strange arc at the corner of his mouth. Remember, you have to go all out. It's best to regard the teacher as an enemy and hold the consciousness of killing the teacher. Because teacher, I have a habit. If you don't draw the sword, it's fine. Once you draw the sword, you can't help but kill people. If you're serious, you'll most likely be killed by mistake. Finished. Hiriko Shinji reached for Zanpakuto at his waist with a half smile. In the eyes of others, he was intentionally scary, but Aizen, who was standing opposite him, clearly sensed that a ferocious killing intent swept across like a storm. Clang. Before Aizen could say anything, a sword sound spread in the kendo hall, and the cold light of the sword shone in all directions, making everyone feel chills all over their bodies. At the same time, a flash of sword light, surrounded by terrifying sharp edges, went straight to Aizen's throat. In the name of teaching the way of swordsmanship, he conducts temptations. As the captain of the court guard, act of oppression. Identity, status, and legitimate reasons are all in place, and even if there are any problems afterwards, they can be recovered. Lan Yan knew when Hiriko Shinji drew his sword and stabbed straight. This is no actual combat exercise, it is clearly intended to put Aizen to death. At this time, Aizen is just a freshman who has been enrolled in the Spiritual Arts Academy for 3 days, and he is not the king who will become a hairspray hand and defect from the Soul Society 100 years later. Not to mention 100 years later, even when Aizen graduated from Spiritual Arts Academy and became the vice-captain of the 5th team, he would not worry at all. Because of Aizen in the vice-captain period, whether Zanquan Zugi, Zanpakuto and Reiatsu have all stepped into the top of Shinigami. Otherwise, Hogyoku would not be studied. But now, I haven't even mastered the 4 skills of Shinigami, and I have only come into contact with Kido, and it took a day or 2. Kendo, Shunpo, white hits. I haven't even attended a class, so why dabble? In the face of Hiriko Shinji, Aizen is not impossible to live, and even wins, and it is the kind of complete suppression, but the premise is to expose all the abilities of Kyoka Suigetsu. Do you doubt the person Aizen, or doubt his Zanpakuto? Or maybe both. Between life and death, Zanpakuto who can see Aizen clearly can also see Aizen clearly. One thought after another burst into Lan Yan's mind. As expected, under the oppression of Hiriko Shinji's murderous and merciless swordsmanship, Aizen, who has never even taken a kendo class, fell into a complete disadvantage. Forced to retreat steadily. If the Reiatsu of the two sides hadn't been the same, any student in the first-class class would have been severely injured by Hiriko Shinji in a face-to-face meeting. Taking a panoramic view of everything, Lan Yan slowly stretched his right hand toward Zanpakuto at his waist, but stopped halfway through. Because under Hiriko Shinji's sword light like a rainstorm of pear blossoms, Aizen seemed to be aware of his plan, and took the time to give him a look, signaling him not to make a move, and he can handle it without using Kyoka Suigetsu. Still want to hide your clumsiness? Still using Kyoka Suigetsu? This guy, isn't he too talented? Do you really think I'm here to teach him the way of swords? Hiriko Shinji stared at Aizen, noticing that the other party was growing at an unimaginable speed, absorbing his kendo crazily and turning it into his own use. A trace of awe flashed in the depths of his eyes. He knew that if Lan Yan continued to grow, it would be impossible to beat Aizen with swordsmanship alone. After all, the opponent also has the Reiatsu strength of Shinigami captain level. Snapped. With this in mind, Hiriko Shinji raised his left hand, changed from holding the knife with one hand to holding the knife with both hands. Bright yellow Reiatsu burst out all over his body, and the oppression visible to the naked eye spread in all directions, filling the entire Mao Kendo gym. Clang. As the swords and lights crisscrossed, Aizen felt an astonishing force pressing along Zanpakuto, forcing him to retreat again and again. At the same time, Hiriko Shinji held up Zanpakuto with both hands, and waved through the air. Boom! The majestic Reiatsu poured out, turning into a substantial Reiatsu slash in midair, followed by his Zanpakuto swinging down, and immediately engulfed the sharp edge that tore the air, like a meteorite falling from the sky, slashed towards Aizen through the air. Aizen. Facing the sudden Reiatsu slash, everyone stood up excitedly. No matter how slow the reaction is, people already know that this is not an actual battle at all, but a battle to the death. The kind that killed Aizen. However, facing the captain-level Shinigami, under normal circumstances, it is a full-strength sword, and it is the kind of Reiatsu in Kendo. Not to mention Tusen Kanami, Komamura Sajin, who have only been exposed to the power of Shinigami for a few days, even Shihuen Yoruichi, Shiba Kaien, etc. There is no way for noble children who have been exposed to Shinigami cultivation. 81 of Bakudo Splitting Void. Just when Reiatsu's slash flew out and was about to drown Aizen, a voice that was so calm that no emotion could be heard suddenly sounded. The voice was not loud, but it was eerily transmitted to everyone's ears in this ridiculed, chaotic, and full of Reiatsu fluctuations in the Mao Kendo gym. Including Hiriko Shinji. Boom! A translucent defensive wall rose from the ground in front of Aizen, like an indestructible, majestic mountain, resisting the oncoming Reiatsu slash. After a brief but intense collision, Reiatsu's slashing blows collapsed on the spot, but the splitting void wall remained motionless, showing no sign of breaking at all. What? That's Bakudo from 81. It's actually able to abandon the chance, and the defense is so strong that it can ignore Captain Shinigami's Kendo. Lan Yan, he has only practiced Kido for less than 3 days. Seeing the splitting void wall that soared into the sky and blocking Aizen, Shihuen Yoruichi, Shiba Kuchiki, Byakuya Kuchiki, etc., all of them turned their heads suddenly, and stared dumbfoundedly at Lan Yan who was sitting cross-legged beside him. Splitting void at number 81. Even if I were to cast it, the defense would be nothing more than that. This kid is much scarier than Aizen. Hiriko Shinji looked at Lan Yan in astonishment. If it is said that the Kendo talent that Aizen showed before made him feel amazing, then the splitting void that Lan Yan displayed with his words and cast-like abandoning chant made him feel horrified. His life is not short, there are hundreds of years. But I have never seen someone who can give up singing and cast Bakudo of number 81 within less than 3 days of contact with Kido. That's too much, Hiriko Shinji. Lan Yan met Hiriko Shinji's gaze. Student, I don't quite understand what you are talking about. On the contrary, you acted without authorization and disrupted the classroom order. This is so difficult for me. Hiriko Shinji tilted his neck and looked puzzled, but there was a smile on his face that made people want to punch him. Yeah, that's really sorry. Since I have influenced Mr. Shinji's class, I should be responsible for it. Lan Yan said while getting up from the ground. My younger brother is not up to date, and his strength is not very good. Continue to force him to be Teacher Shinji's helper, which is not only humiliating himself, but also affects the quality of the course. How about this? Let me replace him. How about being your helper, Mr. Shinji? Although he was asking Hiriko Shinji, in action, he did not give the other party a chance to question, refute, or refuse. Okay. After witnessing the number 81 Bakudo just now, Hiriko Shinji also wanted to touch Lan Yan's bottom. See, he's Aizen, a dangerous figure with ulterior motive, or a pure heaven-defying Shinigami genius. If it's the latter, that's fine, he's not jealous of talented people. In the case of the former, you should take advantage of the present to find out the reality of the other party. Even if they meet in the future, they can handle each other. Aizen, you go back first. Lan Yan crossed the crowd and came to Aizen. Brother, please be careful. Don't beat Shinji-sensei to death. Aizen glanced at his brother, and after catching the undisguised coldness in his eyes, His heart of becoming a god that looked down on all beings, was ruthless, and could treat anyone as a chess piece, was like the surface of a lake. Ripples, rippling ripples for the first time. Do you feel cared for? I didn't expect that I would be happy for such a thing. Quote. Hiriko Shinji's expression was a little exciting when he heard this. In the eyes of others, this is caring about him. But from his point of view, Aizen was obviously trying to instigate his brother to kill him. Ms. Shinji, Kendo, or a battle between the Shinigami. Facing Aizen's reminder, Aizen nodded noncommittally, then turned around and stood opposite Hiriko Shinji. I'm invincible, you can do whatever you want. Hiriko Shinji was smiling, with confidence written all over his face. Although Lan Yan gave up chanting and used No. 81 splitting void, he felt horrified. But he can do this kind of thing himself, so he naturally doesn't think that a freshman who has only been in school for a few days can threaten him, let alone be afraid of the other party. Who can be the captain of Shinigami, which one is easy to be with? Strength is one thing, character is another. Since this is a kendo class, Mr. Shinji, what you just had with Aizen was an actual kendo battle, so let's finish the unfinished class. Lan Yan put his right hand on the handle of the knife and pulled Zanpakuto himself out of the sheath. Okay, Hiriko Shinji's voice still remained on the spot, and the person stepped on Shunpo, pulling out an afterimage on the spot, flashing in front of Lan Yan with a knife like a ghost. Zanpakuto in his hand dragged a chilling Reiatsu knife in midair light, like a mountain of swords pressing down on the top, beheaded. Where the blade passes, the air trembles visible to the naked eye, like boiling water, beating continuously. Sword moves are very simple. To put it nicely, split washin. To put it bluntly, raise a knife and slash straight. The trick is simple, but in the hands of Hiriko Shinji, Zanpakuto is surrounded by extremely terrifying power. The other people on the sidelines saw it and asked themselves, no one dared to say that they could take it head on. Shihu and Yoruichi faced and could only retreat with Shunpo. Seeing Urahara Kazuki, he could only smash all the equipment he was carrying with him, and then ran away. Byakuya Kuchiki faced it head on. Even if Zanpakuto was liberated, Shikai Senbon Sakura, in the end all Sakura flowers would be chopped off. That's the Reiatsu gap. This is the gap in Kendo. The combination of the two is even more insurmountable. However, clang, facing Hiriko Shinji's slashing attack like a mountain of swords, Lan Yan stood there calmly, holding the knife with one hand, and swung the knife from bottom to top. As the swords collided, under the bursts of flames, with the two at the center, a majestic Reiatsu impact surged out, crushing the wooden planks on the ground of the kendo hall until they creaked and cracked layer by layer. A large amount of dust gathered, rose up along the cracks, turned into dust waves and scattered in all directions. The people who had been forced far away by the oncoming swords looked around and found that Lan Yan stood motionless after the swords intersected. Hiriko Shinji's Reiatsu slash, enough to split a hill, couldn't even shake him, let alone knock him back. Just by blocking with one hand, he held his Zanpakuto firmly, and couldn't get any closer at all. Interesting. No wonder your brother told you to be careful. However, with this level of strength, it would be ridiculous and generous to say that the teacher is going to be killed. Hiriko Shinji said casually, but there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. This slash was no less than the slash to Aizen just now, but Lan Yan took it with one hand, which undoubtedly showed that the opponent crushed Aizen both in kendo and in Reiatsu. Yeah, the golden light in Lan Yan's eyes rose, and the whole body burst out with flame-like golden Reiatsus. I saw that his arm exerted strength. Reiatsu gathered on Zanpakuto like a volcanic eruption, and then turned into a crescent-shaped golden slash, soaring into the sky. Boom! Hiriko Shinji's face remained unchanged, but he felt the huge force of the torrent coming from his arm, and his pupils shrank, but he was forced back again and again by Reiatsu's slash. This retreat is 10 meters. Before he could stabilize his body, Lan Yan had already changed to holding the knife with both hands. When his wrists turned, Zanpakuto pulled out a brilliant knife in midair, and immediately stepped forward and slashed straight. The way of the sword, 2 breaks. The air trembled and cracked, and the spiritual seeds in all directions that were invisible to the naked eye were like ice and snow meeting a raging fire, and were instantly vaporized by the spreading golden slash. Boom! Hiriko Shinji slammed on the floor with his right foot. His strong foot was like an invisible nail, piercing into the ground, forcing his body to freeze. Then he grabbed the handle of the knife with all his strength, and raised the knife across his body. Boom! As soon as the Reiatsu slash and Zanpakuto collided, the torrent of Reiatsu burst forth unscrupulously with the cutting edge, drowning Hiriko Shinji. Bang bang bang! Like a wave, Hiriko Shinji flew upside down in the torrent of Reiatsu, like a cannonball, retreating in midair. Even if the Reiatsu was used as a ladder to slow down the force, it was still dragging in midair, pulled out a tail of dust more than 10 meters long, just barely stabilized his body. That's it. Hiriko Shinji raised his neck and looked down at Lan Yan condescendingly, but as soon as he spoke, his pupils shrank to the size of pinholes. The way of the sword, the 100-step flying sword. In sight, Eren changed to holding it with one hand at some point, and put the Zanpakuto across in front of him, pulled it back, and then swung it forward. Hold head high. The moment Zanpakuto let go, the entire Shino Kendo gym, no, the entire Spiritual Arts Academy was overwhelmed by Haki's peerless sword cry, which was like a dragon's chant, engulfing the world. At the same time, Zanpakuto, who left his hand, turned into a golden Reiatsu dragon in the midair under the shocking eyes, exuding a creepy edge, and came out across the sky. In an instant, the giant dragon Reiatsu swooped in front of Hiriko Shinji with its teeth and claws open, trying to swallow him with a knife. What kind of swordsmanship is this? Hiriko Shinji held the knife in both hands and slashed on the upper row of dragon teeth. With force from both feet, Reiatsu spewed out and turned into a huge force, oppressing the lower jaw of the dragon's mouth and preventing its mouth from closing. However, the terrifying force slanted down, still causing his body to bend rapidly and become rickety. At the same time, he couldn't stabilize his body at all, and kept retreating in midair until he flew upside down from the center of the Shino Kendo Hall to the rear wall, and then slammed into it fiercely. Puff! Suddenly, there was a terrifying sound of sharp knives piercing flesh. Then Lan Yan lowered his right hand in front of him, bit Hiriko Shinji, and the Reiatsu dragon that hit the wall scattered. Immediately, a shocking scene appeared. I saw the captain of the 5th team of Gote 13. Hiriko Shinji. He was pierced through his right shoulder by a Zanpakuto, pierced into the wall behind his shoulder, and nailed to the wall of the Mao Kendo gym like a dead dog. Look from a distance. It's like a picture scroll hanging on it. It's just that the information recorded in this picture scroll is too terrifying. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes widened, from nobles to ordinary people, without exception. They were all shocked to the point of dumbfounded, their eyes lost their minds. Tick-tock. I don't know how long it has passed, but only hearing the sound of liquid falling to the ground, everyone just recovered from their sluggishness. That's the captain of Gote 13. Lan Yan only used 3 knives to nail him to the wall. Did I get some ability? Did I see hallucinations? Is Lan Yan too strong, or is the captain too weak? ... After being awakened by the sound of blood falling to the ground, it was replaced by the sound of gasping for breath. This Lan Yan, he's only been in school for a few days, right? How did you practice this unbelievably strong swordsmanship? Hiriko Shinji was also stunned. Over the past few hundred years, he has seen not a few Shinigami who are good at swordsmanship. There is the strongest Shinigami of the millennium, Yamamoto Genyanagi Shigekuni. There is the greatest villain of the Soul Society, Unohana Retsu. But I've never seen a heaven-defying Shinigami with sword talent like Lan Yan. Compared with Lan Yan, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and Unohana Retsu are stronger, but which one has not lived for thousands of years, or even thousands of years? The way of the sword that stood at the top of the Shinigami was completely honed out with time, blood and sweat, fighting to the death, and the corpses of countless enemies. But what about Lan Yan? A new student at Spiritual Arts Academy. Not to mention overpowering him on the sword, and even nailing him to the wall like a dead dog with only 3 knives. Even Hiriko Shinji knew clearly that the opponent's knife was not aimed at his vitals. Otherwise, the injury would definitely be much more serious than it is now. Brother, please be careful not to beat Shinji-sensei to death. At this time, Hiriko Shinji remembered what Aizen said to Lan Yan before for no reason. Before, he scoffed. Now, he is terrified. If it was a simple kendo battle, if he continued to fight, he would really be beaten to death by Lan Yan on the spot. Your kendo saw you perform the feat of beheading the captain like a painting with his 100-step flying sword, and applauded with joy, and decided to teach you the sword Tao 8 swords flying together that you have been comprehending for days. Hearing the voice from beside her ear, Lan Yan was overjoyed. Really, all of his abilities are face-saving and restless guys. The more them I fight, the more vigorously they cultivate and the more rewards. This time, it was the captain of Division 5 who was beheaded. He holds a high position in the Soul Society. This is not. After Jian Dao saw him, he jumped out at the first time, and out of joy, he slammed the freshly baked sword Dao 8 swords flying together on his face with his backhand. Not for anything else, just to ask myself to use swordsmanship to fight more in future battles. On the contrary, if Lan Yan didn't use Zhenquan Zugi, Zanpakuto and Reiatsu, although they would still practice, the efficiency of practice would be a bit touching. Even if there is some progress and a new ability is developed, it will be hidden and given according to the mood. Pata. With the sound of landing, Shiba Yixin seemed to teleport, and appeared out of thin air in the center of the Mao Kendo gym where the floor was broken and flying. Shinji, you actually let your vice captain deceive me. Brother Lan Yan, if something goes wrong, don't blame me for drawing a knife and chopping you up. Shiba roared in his heart while looking around. Seeing that Lan Yan and Aizen brothers are all safe and sound, standing here one by one, I immediately let out a sigh of relief. Immediately afterwards, his eyes turned and fell on Hiriko Shinji. It's okay not to look at it, but I was stunned when I saw it. That expression was the same as when Shihu and Yoruichi and others on the side saw Hiriko Shinji nailed to the wall by Lan Yan's sword just now. Ah, this. Shinji, what are you up to? How did you nail yourself to the wall? Shiba exclaimed in shock. Oh, that's right. Mr. Shinji said he would substitute for you, and invited me to be his helper, to have a real battle with him. So that others can understand what kendo is. Lan Yan made a casual move, and the Zanpakuto nailed to Hiriko Shinji's shoulder flew back as if alive. That's probably the case. If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Anyway, Captain Yixin, your body has also recovered, and I, a substitute teacher, is no longer needed here. Seeing Shiba come back wholeheartedly, Hiriko Shinji also knew that today can only end here. After all, he was already a little bit guilty, and he was embarrassed to face Shiba at this time, and he lost face in front of Lan Yan and other students. Even if he had a thick skin, he didn't want to stay anymore. At this moment, I just want to leave as soon as possible, and take a look at everything that happened today. Seeing that things didn't get out of hand today, I don't need to report to the captain. But, just this once. If I find out next time that you use various reasons to harm my students, then don't blame me for not being a colleague. Shiba blocked Hiriko Shinji's way wholeheartedly, his tone full of unquestionable warning. It was obvious that he was really angry. But yes. On the way to the kendo class, Surugaki Hiyori suddenly said that the 5th squad had encountered an unknown attack, and Hiriko Shinji was not there, so he could only ask him for support. Although he is the captain of the 10th division, he doesn't care about the 5th division's affairs, but Shinigami, who is also Gote 13, will never die if he encounters it, so he also went. Result. Naturally, it was pitted by Surugaki Hiyori. Reminiscing that Hiriko Shinji suddenly came to him last night and said that Aizen had a problem and was a dangerous person, Shiba suddenly woke up. It must be that the other party asked Surugaki Hiyori to distract himself, and then took this opportunity to approach Aizen. That's really thanks to Captain Yixin for his generosity. Hiriko Shinji's face remained unchanged, but his eyes were full of haze. He didn't hate Shiba wholeheartedly. On the contrary, Surugaki Hiyori cheated Shiba away with a lie, and he still felt a little guilty for deceiving this captain who valued love and righteousness. The status of Brother Lan Yan in Shiba's heart really made his heart sink. It was just a class. Actually let Shiba focus on this Shinigami captain, and directly give himself a positive attitude. What does this mean? I can only say that Brother Lan Yan is so popular. This Aizen, there is definitely something wrong. When he faced my knife just now, he didn't have the slightest fear. It seems that what I do is in his expectation. Hiriko Shinji recalled the changes in Aizen's eyes and expression before, and became more confident in his judgment. As for Lan Yan, is he a good brother who simply loves his younger brother, or is he a man behind the scenes who indulges his younger brother? I can't see clearly for the time being, but no matter which one, if you want to get rid of Aizen, a dangerous person, you have to pass him first. Thinking of Lan Yan gives Hiriko Shinji a headache. He could see that Aizen was a dangerous person, not because of his abilities, but because of what he did. Can Lan Yan? He really can't tell. If it's the former, it's okay, I just need to expose Aizen's true colors in front of the other party, and that's easy. If it is the latter, then things are serious. This is definitely a monster 10 times, 100 times more terrifying than Aizen. Although it will be hard for you to accept it, your brother is not a good person. Even when he was still in your mother's womb, he was already a bad kind. Perhaps you are suspecting that I have ulterior motives, but just imagine, I, the captain of the 5th Division, have no enmity with you, so I have nothing to do to target a student of Spiritual Arts Academy. A humble gentleman who knows, Aizen Sosuke. You'd better watch your brother. If you don't want him to go the wrong way, then watch him closely. After all, you don't want to lose a brother, do you? Hiriko Shinji paused and looked directly at Lan Yan. He decided to try it out. Let's see if Lan Yan is a brother who loves his younger brother, or a dangerous person who is more terrifying than Aizen. It's really good at seeing people. Lan Yan's eyes flickered when he heard that. Of course he didn't want to lose his younger brother Bai Wang. So in order to prevent Aizen from going back to the back road, being besieged by the strongest power and wisdom, Kurosaki Ichigo's Moonless and Urahara Kazuki's Kido strategy, plus Aizen's loneliness and conceit, because he doesn't want to continue to evolve, and doesn't want to lose someone who stood at the same height as him, was abandoned by Hogyoku, and he decided to be a good brother. Aizen wanted to do, but did not make it, but also did it well, not to mention the things that Aizen did not do absolutely, and completed them all. Just start with Vizard. I know, you are a good man, and you should be a good brother. Although I was given a knife just now, it was this knife that made me believe that you and Aizen are not the same people. So, I advise you to keep my words in mind and keep an eye on your brother. Hiriko Shinji glanced at the wound on his shoulder. This knife, if it was lowered a little, the injury would be at least twice as serious. He believes that Lan Yan has this strength. You know, Aizen is my younger brother. A trace of strangeness flickered deep in Lan Yan's eyes. He retracted his previous evaluation of Hiriko Shinji. It is accurate to see people, but it is not accurate enough. Frankly speaking, if he hadn't cheated, the bunch of abilities wouldn't be all talented and motivated, and they would practice on their own. For a higher level, he promised that he would only be more ruthless than Aizen, and more powerful, extreme. After all, in the hierarchical world of Soul Society, if you want to survive, there is no one else. There is only strength. That's all for now. Hiriko Shinji didn't say anything after hearing this, and went straight to the entrance of the Mao Kendo gym. After all, as Lan Yan said, other people are brothers, and it is impossible to expect him to be a stranger and turn against each other with a few words. To do this, one is to test Lan Yan, and the other is to plant a seed of doubt in Lan Yan's heart. When Hiriko Shinji and Aizen were about to pass each other, he noticed Aizen's calm eyes, and the gentle smile that was like a spring breeze never disappeared on his face, and his heart was cold. He has been observing each other. Since he entered the Mao Kendo gym until this moment, he still hasn't seen the slightest flaw in this man. Modesty gentleman, sunshine boy, who would believe it? Captain Shinji, you seem to have a deep prejudice against me. Seeing Hiriko Shinji staring at him, Aizen could only smile helplessly. Aizen Sosuke, keep hiding. However, I will keep watching you, until you reveal your true colors. Various thoughts flashed through Hiriko Shinji's mind, but he said it coldly, and at the same time he did not forget to stretch out 2 fingers, first pointing to his own eyes, and then pointing to Aizen's eyes. Captain Shinji, are you taking my words for granted? Shiba's single-minded tone revealed a bit of sullenness. He had warned Hiriko Shinji just now, but the other party was fine, and immediately stated that he would continue to target Aizen. Captain Yixin, as a Shinigami captain, in terms of strength and character, you are this, but from a human perspective, you are this. Of course, it is impossible for Hiriko Shinji to know that Aizen is a dangerous person because of Shiba's single-minded warning words, and let the other party act recklessly in Gotei 13. As he said that, he first gave Shiba a thumbs up, praising Shiba's strength and character of emphasizing love and righteousness, and then when he talked about the way he looked at people, he turned his thumb down. Boom. Shiba did not speak wholeheartedly, but the powerful Reiatsu began to spread from the whole body, and the powerful oppression quickly filled the entire Mao Kendo gym, and his right hand stretched towards the Zanpakuto at his waist. Don't be impulsive, Captain Yixin. Central 46 is absolutely prohibited, and the Captain Shinigami liberates Zanpakuto in Seraiti. You don't want the declining Shiba family to become even more declining. The corners of Hiriko Shinji's mouth raised slightly, showing no fear at all. Shiba Yixin's face sank, and there was a bit of fear in his eyes. Yes, as one of the 5 great nobles in the past, he fell so low that he couldn't even stay in Seraiti. The Shiba family in New Oda is actually supported by him as the head of the branch house. There are only 2 or 3 kittens left in the family, Shiba Kyan, Shiba Kong, and Shiba Ganju. If not the Spiritual Arts Academy nod, or even take the lead. Of course, the Shiba family will not fall here. However, Shiba's wholeheartedness is also at the mercy of others. First, he was fooled by Hiriko Shinji's deputy captain, Surugaki Hiyori, and then ignored his warnings again and again, targeting his students. Who is he? Shiba has one heart. Even if he encounters people who are strangers to him and ask him for help, he will do his best to help. Not to mention the students he recognized. Even if he only taught the other party one lesson. Clang. Shiba raised his head wholeheartedly, his gaze was like a knife, and he looked straight at Hiriko Shinji coldly, then without saying a word, he just tightened his hand holding Zanpakuto slightly, and slowly pulled out a section of the blade. He responded directly to Hiriko Shinji, his own determination, with practical actions. Okay, Captain Yixin, I won't target him anymore, is that okay? Hiriko Shinji took a deep look at Shiba Yixin, and seeing the determination in Shiba's eyes, Zanpakuto had already pulled out a section, feeling helpless and troublesome. He knew he couldn't stimulate Shiba so much anymore. Otherwise, the opponent draws his sword on the spot, no matter who wins or loses in the end. Once the Shinigami captain fights, he is sure that Aizen will laugh in his heart. You sure? Shiba Yixin still doesn't quite believe Hiriko Shinji's words. Yes, not only am I no longer targeting Aizen, I even apologize for it. I also want to cultivate him. After he graduates from Spiritual Arts Academy, I will transfer him to the 5th team as my vice captain. Captain Yixin, do you think I can train him enough? He will reach the sky in one step, and he will be the vice captain after graduation. Hiriko Shinji had a weird smile on his lips. Shiba's face was cloudy and uncertain. Changing another Shinigami captain and directly appointing a graduate of Spiritual Arts Academy as the vice captain, that would definitely be a leap to the sky. But what about Hiriko Shinji? He can think clearly about the purpose of transferring Aizen to the 5th team as the vice captain. Unfortunately, he couldn't get fit again. After all, Hiriko Shinji's words are all about the cultivation of Aizen. It's useless even if it's troubled by the captain. As the captain of the 5th division, Hiriko Shinji has this right. Snapped. Just when Shiba was annoyed and struggling, a hand suddenly reached out from his side, grabbed his Zanpakuto, and pushed back the Zanpakuto that had been pulled out of the scabbard by a small section. Lan Yan. Shiba turned his head to look, and saw that the person who made the shot was Lan Yan. This is the second time. Hiriko Shinji, you are too much. Lan Yan smiled lightly, but everyone who saw his smile felt a chill rush over their face. It's like being held around the neck with Zanpakuto, and the cold blade is pressed against the skin. I don't quite understand what you mean. Is it wrong for me to cultivate Aizen and let him serve as the vice captain of the 5th team? As the captain of the 5th team, when you meet a subordinate who has potential, ability and is loved by everyone, of course you have to entrust him with a heavy responsibility gone. Or, you don't want me to cultivate him, but you want me to target him. Hiriko Shinji figured it out. It doesn't matter whether Lan Yan is a good brother or a mastermind behind the scenes. The other party is determined to keep Aizen. At least, now that Aizen has revealed his true face, this is an insurmountable hurdle. Although he doesn't want to start now, he won't be soft. Call Aizen to his side, it's not just lip service, he'll do it when he gets back. Even if it would make Lan Yan dissatisfied with him, he would not hesitate. Even Shiba, who is the captain of the 10th squad and the head of the Shiba branch house, has no scruples, let alone what Lan Yan thinks. I'll give you another chance to reorganize the language. Lan Yan looked at Hiriko Shinji silently. Are you afraid that your brother will surpass yourself? It's okay, I can also cultivate you. What do you think of the expedition team? After you graduate, I can personally transfer you to the expedition team. With your strength, you can become the captain in less than 100 years. Hiriko Shinji smiled. He is the captain of the 5th squad, so naturally he will not be afraid of a new student. Although, just now, the opponent nailed the sword to the wall, but it was a battle of swordsmanship. Cut the fist and walk away the ghost. Kendo is just one of his abilities. If he really wants to do it, he has full confidence to take down a freshman who even Bankai has not mastered. Since words cannot separate the Lanyan brothers, he decided to directly use the authority of the captain of the 10th division to directly separate the Lanyan brothers with righteousness and authority. One person stayed in the 5th division, and one person was sent to the expeditionary team. One in Seraiti, one in Hueco Mundo. This is undoubtedly the best way to deal with it. Captain, alright, I got it. Teacher Yixin, I want to ask one thing. What should I do to become the captain of the 13th division of the Gote? After hearing this, Lan Yan had to praise Hiriko Shinji as the Shinigami who first discovered the danger of Aizen. Although Aizen let him discover it on purpose, his comprehensive ability is indeed top-notch. Otherwise, after going to the present world and forming Vizard, he would not quickly become the leader of Mugaruma Kensai, Love Ikawa and others. Don't look at Vizard's performance in the face of Aizen, but the performance is good, and they are all captains and vice-captains. Split yourself and Aizen. This is indeed the best way. Become the captain. As far as I know, there are 3 methods. One is to pass the captain's exam under the witness of 3 captains including the chief captain, the other is to be recommended by 6 captains, and then get the approval of 3 of the remaining 6 captains. Under the witness of 200 team members, the team leader can only be succeeded by winning the duel with the current captain. As soon as Shiba finished speaking, his eyes widened. Obviously, he also understood the other party's plan. What Lan Yan said next also confirmed his conjecture. I see. In 27 days, I will apply to Spiritual Arts Academy for early graduation. At that time, I will personally go to the 5th team to challenge the captain of the 5th team. Hiriko Shinji. Lan Yan's astonishing words caused an uproar among Shihuan Yoruichi, Urahara Kazuki and others. Whether it is 1 month, applying for early graduation, or challenging the captain of the 5th team after graduation, looking at the history of Seraiti, that is something that has never happened before. Not to mention the challenge captain. Say you graduate early. Shinigami, which has the shortest early graduation time since the establishment of Spiritual Arts Academy, also takes a year. Just because it takes time to practice Zonquan Zugi, it takes time to accumulate Reiatsu, it also takes time to comprehend Shikai and Bankai, and to master them in battle. Adding the 3 together, even Hitsugaya Toshiro, Ichimaru Jin and others in the future will take several years, or even more than 10 years, to achieve it. You want to challenge me? Hiriko Shinji looked at Lan Yan in astonishment. Obviously, he didn't expect the other party to do this either. Why not? I've given you a chance, 3 times, but you didn't take it seriously. Then, I have no choice but to get off the field myself, and let you realize the fact that you don't take yourself too seriously, Captain Hiriko. Lan Yan's tone was not salty, as if graduating from Spiritual Arts Academy in 1 month and challenging the captain of the 5th team were nothing more than ordinary things to him. It's like kicking a small stone while walking on the side of the road. Casual, easy, and effortless. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.